So everybody, I want to welcome our guest for today, Uncle Sam. Dude, I'm not gonna lie. That is like, I thought that was gonna be cheesy. It is cheesy, but that was great. So yes, Uncle Sam. If you don't know, next week has a birthday. I mean, let's be honest, guys. It could be Uncle Sam. It could be Lady Liberty. It could be whoever. All right, it's the 4th of July. That's what we're getting at. Next week, which is when this podcast will come out.
Yep.
We're guys. We have jobs. We have lives. We have kids. We have lives and wives. So by the time that we get this out and everything else, so also on top of it being Uncle Sam's birthday, you'll probably notice that we're rocking some awesome shirts today. Beautiful, beautiful. And we have our trusty mugs. What's that little moment here? Yeah. Yes, yes. And some other stuff that we'll probably have. And I'm sure if you watch us long enough today's episode, you'll probably get to see our fantastic ad.
Yeah.
So we want to give a shout out and thanks to No Shave Life. You'll see their ads throughout, but thank you guys so much for sponsoring this episode. It means a lot because kind of getting back to what we were saying, we've been really busy this week, not just with like life, kids, or work, but we've been working on the podcast stuff. And I'll tell you, it's been a lot of fun. Like, you hit the nail on the head the other day when we were talking, because I said I took a half day. My job, this kind of getting close to end of quarter, I was like super busy.
Yeah.
My boss was like, hey, why don't you take a half day today? And it was kind of his idea, because I told him I was busy. I was doing some other stuff. He's like, oh, take a half day. And I spent my entire half day working out here in the studio. Which is why the new lighting is here behind Uncle Sam. You can really tell as well.
Well, there's a saying, and it may be Jim Rohn, or it may be some other. I try to think of this other guy. There's another really big. It was like one of the earlier motivational speakers, but basically what they said was, work your 9 to 5 so that when you go home, you can work on your passion.
Yeah,
and that's what you're talking
it's
about.
Different than the old adage of, I always get it wrong, but what is it? Do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life. I always butcher it, but it's close. And I like that, but it's like, okay, I don't know. I just feel like when you tell that to when I say that to my kids, I'm like, oh, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life. I feel like I'm kind of lying to them, because the answer is you still have to work. So I like that expression a lot better. That's what I mean. Like, because the answer is you have to have a job. You have to do something to support yourself. Hey, maybe one day we can be like those other podcast people and we can do this for a job. Right now, it's not a job. It's a passion.
Yeah.
I don't like to say it's a side hustle, because we're not doing this for that.
Yeah.
If that happens, that'd be awesome.
Well, if your regular job called you yesterday and said, I need you to work until 2:00 in the morning, you'd have been absolutely not.
And I've been in those positions. Yeah.
But you still work till 2:00 in the morning, but you're working on setting up and improving the podcast studio.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that I did. Yeah. Last night, guys, if you've watched our previous episodes, I hope it looks better. If it doesn't, you haven't gone back far enough in the episodes yet. I mean, I think it's always looked good. You talked about it in our very first episode it was our second one, because it was with Tyler, and you said I was saying something about how I was in such a panic to get it right, to make it not get it right. Let me rephrase that. I was in such a panic to make it perfect that I never got to hit record, because I was like, no, I'm not ready yet. I need to do this and do this. I mean, even tonight when you showed up, you walked in, you're like, oh wow, we changed stuff, because I mean I did. I moved some stuff around. One day I think it would actually be kind of cool to actually do like maybe some shorts like from our phones. I'm not saying like people listening to the podcast probably don't all care.
Yeah.
But like it might be kind of neat for somebody to be like, oh, I mean, these guys they don't have a podcast studio. We don't. We're in my garage.
Yeah.
And granted, we have some equipment, and it's a lot of
Bill
stuff.
Gates started his garage. So does Steve Jobs.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. But like, I feel like I don't have crayons over here. Like, I mean, I spent some money on some stuff, but it's not the end of the world. And we could do this with one camera, and you could do this with very little equipment, and that was kind of fun. And honestly, that's been a lot of fun adding stuff. Like, because you're right, it's a passion now. I've gotten excited with it. I'm enjoying it, and even my wife, like, she tolerates it, right? Like, I ordered the things to hold the cameras from the ceiling. Which, guys, if you notice, like now when I touch the desk, you're not shaking. Isn't that
Now we
awesome?
beat on it like caveman. It's not going to shake the whole camera.
Which now they're gonna be like, we didn't even notice that. And don't put that in the comments, please, because like I was like,
Comment away.
I was in like a cold sweat over it when I watched that one episode, because it was the first episode that the lighting was good. And I think like in the other episode, the first two, which you guys haven't seen that one yet, but like when we've done
They've
this,
seen the first two. They haven't seen like the newest one.
they haven't seen it with this lighting. So this is this is going to be the
one with
first
new lighting.
chance. Yeah. And we recorded another one with somebody because their schedule, which will be coming out the week after. But this is going to be for 4th of July. So you'll see us first, and then you'll see the next one, which, maybe today we could tease a little bit and be like, hey, the next episode, you guys need to come back for.
If you look at any major YouTuber or podcaster, go to the videos, scroll all the way down, sort it by date, and go to their first one. It's always light years better than wherever they're at right now.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Oh, sure.
And so that's why any professional, like, I guess you could say coach, that would teach you how to create a podcast or a YouTube or anything, they say just start.
Just start.
Just start.
I agree.
Just hit record.
And what's so funny is I knew that. And even, but I get this like perfection paralysis. And it's not because I'm not a perfectionist. It's not really my personality. So I don't know why I do that. I think it's my work ethic. I am like working when I was a fireman. Like, you have to get it right. There's a big stigma behind it.
Yeah, the lives aren't on the line for this, man.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's life's on the line. My boss, when I started my newest job, when I was interviewing, I thought it was really funny because they were like, "Oh, tell us," they always do those questions. Guys, you've been there. Like, tell us about a time where you had to handle a difficult situation. And I'm over like, oh man, this dude got smoked on a motorcycle, and like he was over here and over there, and I'm like talking about this stuff, and I'm like, and we had people running around, and there was cars, and the look on this person's face, and I'm like, oh, I mean, that's a stressful situation. They're like, no, we meant like, you ran out of toner and you had a project that was due that needed to get printed. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm like, that stuff doesn't really stress me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a slightly different level. I mean, there's still things that like stress me out at work, but when my boss, like you said, when your boss calls and says, hey, can you work? I had to work Easter Sunday, which I don't mind. It actually was nice because, like, why not? But I know a lot of people will be like, oh, you had to work a Sunday. I'm like, I worked nights at an ER so long. Like, I remember like waking up going, what day is it?
Yeah.
Because you just, you just get into a grind. You're like, oh, I have a day off tomorrow. And they're like, oh, what day? Like, tomorrow. And so like with this, I think it's fun because it's an escape. Granted, I'm walking 10 feet from where like I live.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the garage, but it's been a really nice escape to get away and come out here and it's a playground. That's what this has really become for me.
I look forward to coming and doing this every week.
I look forward to it. I'm sorry there was no snacks.
It's okay.
Guys, when you watch next week, you'll see we got snacks because
You're the only snack I need, Bookie.
oh, that's love right there. I love you too, Uncle Sam. Don't feel jealous.
This is
Don't
actually
jealous.
really great practice for what we talked about. Like if you ever have a guest and they don't want to talk, this is a great practice.
Yeah. So this is
He's so humble. Like he doesn't want to say a word. He doesn't want to promote himself.
he promotes himself a lot.
He does.
He does.
but
he's well renowned
he's
all
very
over the
camera
world.
shy. Like he has a nice face.
We should have tried to put like some strings, like some marionette puppets on him or something, but
that should
which
be your
also-
no shave life model right there. I mean, he's got like an immaculate beard
He
and his
does.
mustache is perfect.
it's a little crooked on this one side. I need to fix it.
You need
And
some balm.
some balm. Here you go, Uncle Sam. You need some.
No
you
shave.
need some balm. Some no shave life balm. Here we go. No, you know what? No shame, but we're throwing up the no shave.
Don't you love
products
how
today.
flawless that is?
That was
It's
so smooth,
seamless.
so seamless. We needed to get another camera. Just like it'll just like slowly as we're talking, just pan over. Guys, I'm sorry if we're annoying you by the fact that we're very excited because we got our first sponsor, and that's really cool. When you guys start your, because I think you guys should. If you're not in a group, you don't have somebody. If you're already listening to podcasts, there's no reason not to do something. Just make content. Have fun with it. We don't. Did we have a clue what we were going to talk about tonight? I mean, even tonight, we saw each other last week. I'm sure we're going to have some reoccurring themes, but
of course, yeah.
We sat down in here and you were like, what do you want to talk about? And we spent a couple minutes just like, oh, dude, I've been busy this week. Mm-hmm. I know you've been busy this week. Let's talk about life or whatever. But then you just hit record and just have fun with it.
Yeah. I've always told people that there's a lot of people that have this idea of creating a podcast because they see big podcasts and they're successful. These are successful people with large podcasts.
Well, you did say that about the video thing. I thought was good because Mr. Beast, I mean, that's like the biggest. He's not a podcast, but videos in general. Mm-hmm. He talked about in an episode I watched one time about how his first video is still online. And he goes, I hate it, I despise it, but he left it online because he's like, that's where I came from. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people should do that. Like, don't be scared of what you looked like. We looked terrible 2 weeks ago. I'm not terrible. I think it was okay, but like,
well, 5 years from now, we'll look back and be like, oh my God, remember when we were in that garage?
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like, that's the.
To be honest, I think the garage is awesome, but 5 years from now, we might look back and be like, man, remember where we started?
I think it's going to be more like 5 years from now. My wife's going to be like, man, I'm so glad you're not in the garage anymore. Which, speaking of which, I have to put Uncle Sam back in the front yard when we're done because she spent a lot of time decorating the front yard, and she's going to come home later and be like, someone stole our blow up.
but the point I was going to say is there's a lot of great ideas, and there's already a lot of podcasts out there, and people may think that what I was really trying to say is don't make the mistake of thinking podcasting is easy, YouTubing is easy. There's a lot of work to it. There's a lot of skills you have to develop.
It's hard to do alone.
However, there's plenty of room out there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room out there. And you may say, well, you already have all these really big podcasts out there. So what?
So add something else to the conversation.
Do you listen to every one of them?
No.
There's,
in fact, the ones I listen to, I like to just like bounce ideas off of you. Like, oh, hey, I saw a little bit of this one or that one. And we recommend podcasts to each other all the time. You're always sending me links.
7 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
And even the biggest podcast has like a couple million. Right. And it's like,
we even talk about him sometimes. We talk about Joe Rogan because the two of us watch his podcast. But like, what? I don't know. I mean, what does he have? I don't know. What is it?
Like his.
Yeah, like what's a massive? I mean, I don't know what a massive amount of. I remember when I started my TikTok, and I started it because it was fun. I mean, that's all it is. I started TikTok for the very same reason that we started this podcast. That looks fun. I mean, that's why I started this. And I remember hitting like 100 and 1,000, and then I remember hitting 5,000 people, and me telling my wife like, I think this is the coolest thing ever. Mm-hmm. And now I have like 300,000 followers on TikTok. I don't deserve 300,000 followers. It's about the content. It's just put something out fun and somebody liked it. But there's 300,000 people out there that wanted to watch me make beer.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan
has
crazy. Almost 17 million on YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. But there's 7 billion people. And granted, they're not all going to have access. They don't all speak English.
Well, sure.
Right. But my point is like
17 million.
There is a lot of people in the world, and there's a lot of different hobbies, a lot of different personalities. And just because you feel like your niche may already be flooded or it may be non-existent doesn't mean that you can't, if it's something you're passionate about, it doesn't mean that you cannot create value to people.
Or just add something to the conversation.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. When you go to college, you sit in a room with somebody that's an expert on the information. Right? I mean, you have a professor. Or you go to high school, whatever. I say college because, like, if you and I were going to go to a classroom today, we would be in college, right? So you show up to college, you're in a room with somebody that is a learned fellow, right, who knows something about the material, hopefully knows something about the material, and you ask dumb questions, you kind of look like a fool, you get feedback, whatever else. But, like, that's the learning process. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to doing things, it's the exact same way. You fall on your face, you figure out that, hey, if the cameras weren't mounted to the table, when I bump the table, it's not going to move all the time. I had no idea how to do this. I literally was sitting in bed with my eyes open and just figured it out. Hey guys, we'll be right back to the podcast in just a second. But first, I'd like to thank this week's episode sponsor, No Shave Life. No Shave Life Beard Co. offers everything from headwear, hand-printed apparel, beard care products for those who choose to be bearded and awesome always, including their new baseball diamond shirt collection inspired by your favorite professional baseball teams. You can dive into their extensive collection of beard care products ranging from beard oils and balms. My favorite is the Southern Tobacco Blend. It is fantastic. Love the way it makes my beard feel, and my wife loves the way that it smells. Head over to noshavelife.com. Use the promo code NEATTALKS15 for 15% off your first order. That's NEATTALKS15 for 15% off your first order. Thank you again, No Shave Life, for sponsoring this week's episode. And now, back to the conversation.
It's just like if someone wants to get in shape. You can overanalyze it and never go to a gym or never go running or anything.
Yeah.
And really, yes, there are forms. There's a diet you can follow. There's specific ways you can list things to maximize your gains. But at the end of the day, if you go pick up something heavy and lift it over and over until you're tired, congratulations,
that's
you started working out. If you do it consistently,
Yeah.
the whole point is start. You can always fine tune later. But if you spend 6 months researching how to do the proper curls and what dumbbells are best and what diet should I do, that's 6
Or
months
reading
that
the
you
history
never.
of the world's greatest bodybuilders.
Yeah, I mean,
Not going to help you.
If your goal is to start working out, just go work out. If your goal is to create a podcast, I started on my phone. I started recording
Not in the
podcasts
shower.
on my phone. Not in the shower. Not in the shower. But I took my phone and I propped it up against some books and I hit record.
Yeah.
And then I uploaded to YouTube. That's where I started.
Yeah.
8 years ago.
It's crazy.
Well,
and imagine how much technology has changed too. Because 8 years ago,
it was very different. Yeah.
it was very different. It's very different. I mean, the stuff that we're recording with even today, which is, it's not like this is not the highest quality stuff ever. I mean, I bought that used. I bought this used. I got those off of Amazon shipped to my house. Amazon. I mean, it's the access.
You say that, but it's the highest quality I've worked with.
No, and that's what
And I've been
that's
doing
what I'm
this for 8
getting at.
years.
8 years ago, a setup like this was a professional setup. I mean, this would have been a pipe dream to somebody 8 years ago. And that's kind of like with the home brewing equipment. It's the same way. What we had 8 years ago was plastic buckets and funnels, and nowadays we've got Bluetooth hydrometers to check sugar levels and apps to track everything. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's really crazy how much technology has changed, but it makes some things easier. AI. Look at AI now.
Oh, yeah,
8 years
it's
ago,
crazy.
that blows my mind. Imagine what 5 years from now is going to look like.
So I guess the big takeaway for everybody listening before we move on is if you're watching this on YouTube,
Yeah.
be sure you like and subscribe.
Oh yeah, please do.
If this makes it into TikTok, be sure you're following. Same thing with Spotify, like and follow, because this, like I said, this is going to be the third official episode, but there's already content we have recorded that's coming out the week after. We're going to keep doing this. This isn't going away. If you enjoy these conversations, you need to be listening in. But where I was going to go with that is I have a stupid charcoal grill in my backyard.
the Weber.
Yeah, you throw the
little
briskets in and
briquettes.
you cook the food. I went to a buddy of mine. We were playing Call of Cthulhu, right? A D&D
I
game.
can tell where this story's going.
And he's like, hey, check out come outside real quick. I need to.
Massive,
He has one
Tim
of
the
those.
Tool Man Taylor.
That's not massive, but he has one of those pellet fed.
Oh yeah,
Grills?
yeah,
And there's an app on his phone and it tells him the temperature
yeah.
and it automatically feeds to maintain the temperature and it tells you.
But does he use it?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking at the end of this was going to be
We're sitting there
and
playing
he
games
never
I
uses
need
it.
to go refill
Yeah,
the
that's
pellets
so
and
cool.
everything.
I
It's
had
like,
a
that
pellet
wasn't
smoker.
a thing 10 years ago.
Yeah, I have a grill, but I had a pellet smoker. I'm gonna teach you something. First of all, they're not expensive. And like you said, the technology is getting cheap. But
Even the bags aren't expensive.
no, they're dirt cheap actually. But the problem is here's what they don't tell you. Maybe it was in the booklet and I just didn't read the booklet, so it's probably my fault. But you fill up the hopper, okay, and then the hopper feeds the pellets, okay. At the end of the year, I was thinking like, oh, I'm done. There was still some, not like in the hopper, but in the little auger, right? I was like, oh, that's fine. I mean, I'll leave them in there, no biggie. When I go next year, when I turn it on, those are going to come out. It'll take a little time. It'll burn those off, and then I'll have the new flavor. Don't do that. I broke mine because the pellets, the moisture in the air, they swole.
Oh,
And there's no way to get it. Like you'd have to disassemble the entire thing to try to get to the thing, which would probably be busted or broke. Yeah. So
wow. That's inconvenient.
yeah. So and of course you go online to troubleshoot that, and guess what they say? Whenever you're done using it, you should leave it on until it runs through the, like you only put as much in the hopper as you need. And I didn't know that. I'm like, why do you say that the hopper holds 12 pounds? Like in my mind, I'm like,
For a busy day.
well, in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm
4th of
like,
July weekend. You got things to grill, man.
I'm thinking like, it's like a dog food bin, right? Like you buy a big bag, you dump it in the thing.
What kind of food are you cooking, dude?
Well, no, I mean, it actually, like you would think 12 pounds is a lot, but it goes pretty quick because I mean they're very small. It looks like rabbit feed if you haven't. Had
Yeah.
one, but I do love mine. Before you move on, I wanted to add something. You were talking about, like there's no better time than just do it. Just hit the record button, and there was a little thing I thought of with that. There's a Chinese proverb. I think I actually sent it to you the other day, and I was like, "This is us. This is us on the podcast." That was the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to lose that train of thought. But when you were talking about that, I was like, that really kind of popped back into my head because you're right. You can spend 10 years, 8 years waiting to start with professional equipment, or you can say, no, hey, I'm going to press play right now. 10 years ago, that's the best time.
Yeah.
And then, see where it pans out from there. But I just wanted to share that little thing. I like that expression. The best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is now.
We didn't know each other 10 years ago.
That's very true. My knees didn't hurt as bad 10 years ago.
No. I was, 31? Gosh. I was a baby.
I'm not going to lie. I don't miss my 20s. People always talk about that like, oh, I wish I was 21 again. Absolutely not. I did not enjoy that time of life because you have all the strength and vigor and whatever you need in life
None of the brains.
to just be an idiot. Yeah, 100%. So like if I could have that body, yeah, sure, of course. I wish I had a 21-year-old body. But no way would I want to go back to being 21.
So I guess you never
30
saw.
was good. 30 was good.
I guess you never saw the clips about this new procedure they're working on right now.
Is it to like try to reverse aging?
Kind of, I guess.
Like
So
turning back time?
you-
Hey,
you-
wait. We forgot something.
What? Oh man,
Guys.
What a bunch of
oh my
amateurs.
God, serious, I'm so sorry. Guys, we've robbed you. You're going to have to go back and like put this at the beginning of the podcast.
There's a 1776 right here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So here. I've got my glass.
with my unsweet tea.
Justin has his glass. Sweet tea. And cheers, man. Cheers, Uncle Sam. Thank you.
Cheers.
I'm sorry. I did
like
not mean to
that.
cut you off, but
No.
I was like, it just dawned on me like, hey, we didn't do that. That's our shtick.
Oh, I was talking about the procedure.
Sorry, continue.
So you cannot take a human and say they're terminally ill. You cannot cut their skull open, take their brain out, and put it in a healthy body.
Right.
But
Well, I mean,
But-
you could try. That's Dr. Frankenstein.
they're working on a procedure. It might be 10, 20 years from
You're
now.
talking like downloading consciousness or whatever?
No.
Oh, okay. Better?
It's so much more gruesome.
Oh.
But they just remove the entire head and put it on a new body.
Hold on. So you're talking like, how is that easier than like transferring the brain? That's, I mean,
It's
you're
a lot
still,
of the brain is very sensitive, and it's a lot of trauma taking it out and moving it and all that. What if
well,
you just remove the
so-
entire head and part of the top part of the spinal column?
but it's not like they would be able to walk.
Yes.
Okay, then how does it, when you sever the spinal cord, like how do you cut the spinal cord that you could like put the head on something
Like I
else
said,
and
this is
reattach
10
it?
and 20 years from now.
I
where
think
they
it's
can-
got to be more than
where
that.
they can
There's no way
reconnect
we're
it.
that close to something like that. I
Well,
remember,
look at everything that they're doing with Neuralink now, where
Dude, that's so cool.
you have someone that couldn't use their arms and legs, but now they have the implant and they can actually, they're not moving or anything, but they can use their eyes and stuff to interact with computers and things like that.
Have you watched the like the interviews with one of the guys? I don't know their names.
No.
I mean, but I feel like we're gonna know these people. Like they'll be famous later in life as like, you know, a known person who did X, Y, or Z with the Neuralink. But he plays video games. Like now he can play video games, and he keeps getting banned
Why?
for cheating.
He's just that good now? Like
Okay,
has
so
his eyes, I guess.
no, okay, so I came in kind of late to the conversation, and it was on TV, so I did not have a way of like going back. But so there's different forms of Neuralink. Like some people are paralyzed, and so they just use it to like for automation. Some people can't talk, and they use it for like typing. All this. Well, this guy wanted to play because the first guy that got it like stayed up for whatever it was, like 36 hours playing Civilizations. Once he could finally play, because he's and you know, like his family the next day were like, "Have you been awake all night?" And he's like, "Yes." And they're like, "You need sleep." And he goes, "I haven't been able to play video games in 16 years."
Wow.
And I'm
He
like,
wants to play Civilization.
"Yeah."
I mean, it's not a bad game,
But he was like, well, maybe that was like all he had, or it was somebody else's. But I thought that was like the most soul crushing thing. I'm like, this guy finally could like communicate with the world. And what did he want to do? What every other guy wants to do. He just wanted to stay up all night and play video games. But he had this really cool. This other guy, he can't use his hands, and so, or he can't use his hands. He can use one. I think that's what it is. So he can use, maybe it's the direction or the mouse. Anyways, he has to use the Neuralink to control where he's aiming. We'll just go with that. So I guess it's the mouse. The computer input coming from the Neuralink to the game is fast enough that it registers as too fast for a human being's hand.
Yeah.
So he keeps getting banned for cheating.
See, that's where I was going with it, because if
Yeah.
you have to use the mouse, there's a delay, but
Well,
you can look at something faster,
Oh.
and if you're just clicking when you look at it.
It's not his eyes. It does. So the Neuralink doesn't track your eye movement. Your Neuralink tells it. I don't know how to describe it. It says look left. Like like if I said lift your left hand, there is a momentary pause for me to say it, you to hear it. Auditory translation gets into your brain. Your brain sends a signal. You're now consciously aware that your hand exists, and you lift your hand. Okay. Yes, that's like instantaneous, basically. But imagine if it was faster than instantaneous. He says, like, when he's playing video games, he will look at an enemy before he consciously becomes aware that he saw it.
Wow.
Because he's like, my brain has already processed that it's there, and then has to send that information to me. There's a bad guy, shoot that way. But by the time that the message gets to his eyes, the message gets to his brain, he's already looking and engaging, because the Neuralink was between those two, heard it, and already sent the signal, look over there and start shooting.
So imagine.
So they're actually saying they're going to have like a separate gaming league because they keep getting banned, and they have to like, there's actually a process now at a couple of the companies, like part of the appeal process, you have like a doctor's note. I have a Neuralink.
Wow.
Because, well, they're going to get sued. Can you imagine banning somebody from playing your game because they have a wheelchair?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a Americans with Disability Act. Can you imagine banning somebody from coming in your store because they're in a wheelchair? Sorry, we don't allow wheelchairs in here. How'd you like to get sued as Activision for a couple $100 million class action lawsuit? Oh, we keep banning people. Why? They have special needs. I mean, we mark my words. Give it 10 years. We're going to have a class action lawsuit for.
So think about cases where maybe you can't move, say, like your left arm.
Sure.
The nerves are intact, but for whatever reason you can't move it. And Neuralink, as it evolves over time.
Oh, you mean like if there's like a loss of signal? Like,
yeah, it could.
my arm is attached, but the nerve is dead or something.
And then say even more interesting, say you have a prosthetic arm. And prosthetic arms have come a long way. However, you still gotta do certain things with your muscles and learn how to do it. What if somewhere down the line you can have a Neuralink and a prosthetic arm instead of like
Oh, I see.
it feeds directly from your link. So now it feels
Luke Skywalker's
like
arm.
Luke,
I get
like
you.
Luke Skywalker. Like maybe you can even actually feel it has sensors. You can actually feel what you're doing.
Don't
move
they
things.
have? Don't they have like the prosthetics that like sense? Well, I guess it's
Yeah.
not because it's not a signal. It's just like when you squeeze the sensor, like because let's say we're just missing here.
Yeah.
Like when you squeeze, it senses this muscle.
It has
and
sensors
it knows,
that it feels like your muscle movement.
but
and
it
stuff.
doesn't have like fine motor control because there's no sensor. But like a Neuralink would actually possibly theoretically.
And then imagine
capable of that.
And then imagine. I know you don't like animes, but did you play Cyberpunk?
No,
But
I didn't.
imagine, or even Ghost in a Shell, which is also an anime. Imagine you get to a point where the cybernetics actually are more advantageous than just being flesh and blood, right? You have legs that can.
Are you
that
talking
can,
about like cybernetic enhancement? Kind
yeah,
of stuff?
that can make you run faster and lift more.
I
or
genuinely think that we already have a lot of that stuff that we don't know about, though.
could be.
There's no way that Elon Musk has Neuralink and the military didn't have it 10 years ago.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like there's always
I mean, we didn't have reusable spaceships until SpaceX
but
came along.
I think we did though. Because
Maybe.
because most people would argue that because like the space shuttle stopped how long ago? But we're still flying the space plane.
Yeah.
That little whatever it's called. I don't even know what it's called, but the little NASA space plane, they send it up all the time.
Do you know there's a whole
Look at the B-2 stealth bomber. No one would have believed you if you said that there was something that big that is invisible
yeah.
that you've never seen. And then I remember being alive. It was in the 90s.
It had already
when
been
they-
in use before they finally we got this thing.
Yeah, but they like brought it. They like rolled it out on TV. I remember like Saturday morning cartoons on the news. Or like the Army announces their new bomber or whatever. Google Earth just accidentally leaked the new submarine. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, the Navy was pissed. Somebody put up a Google satellite picture, and they, of course, the Google's like, hey, guys, you got to tell us. Like, if you're going to have something somewhere that's not classified, you have to tell us, and we'll scrub it. But it's like a UAS. It's an unmanned, well, it's not UA, whatever. It's a drone submarine, but it's massive. And it looks like a stealth bomber, like it's a delta wing shaped thing. Yeah, Google it later.
So let's take this one step further because I think these are two things that are linked because we were talking about like cybernetics and stuff, right?
I see what you did.
However, what if you have an implant like a Neuralink or something equivalent that not only can it give you control over certain things, but it can take over your senses? And what I mean by that,
It doesn't have output, but actual input.
so right now, if I wanted to play Skyrim virtual
I see
reality,
what you mean.
I have to put on a headset and I have the hand things, but it's kind of
Hepatic
limited.
feedback, that
But,
kind of stuff.
but what if you could actually, like, your eyes are actually seeing things and you're walking, but instead of actually physically moving like you could be sitting in a chair,
Right.
and you're telling yourself to walk, but
It's not virtual reality. It's reality. It's altered reality.
it's an altered reality. Basically, your consciousness is inserted
Sensory
into
perception and
you're
stuff.
smelling the horker cooking on the griddle or whatever they got over there.
you played
can taste the
too much
mead.
Skyrim if you like
You
knew
can
that.
feel
you
the,
remember
you
the
can feel
names of
pain.
the food.
Yeah, I played Elder Scrolls since Morrowind, dude. I don't know all that stuff, but
I mean, you
imagine that.
Oh no, 100%. Well, and
But also,
everything our brain receives is just an electrical signal anyway.
but also it
Everything.
could change war because
Yeah.
if you could kind of hijack your senses, you can create a robotic.
Right.
Like the cybernetics, like robots have come a long
Oh,
way.
dude, I
You
see that
can
little
create-
dog thing that DARPA has walking
or
around.
you could
I'm
even
like, that
have
creeps me
you
out.
could even have a drone,
Yeah.
and instead of remote controlling it, you're in that. Like you're
Oh, yeah,
you're that
yeah.
robot.
It's like an exoskeleton.
Yeah, but you're in it. Kind of like Avatar with the Na'vi.
Yeah.
But less dumb. you're the robot, and you have so much more control.
Right.
And then if something happens to you, well, I mean, you're over in the United States, and something happens to you across the world, you wake up and you're like, oh, okay, load me up another one.
And you know, I know people talk about things like, oh, I think technology advances to a point. I'm talking about you, Uncle Sam, that eventually technology, like, it gets to a point where you have to worry. I don't know how to put this. Like, the more technologically advanced, I say weaponry. I'm not talking about like click, click, boom, boom, like guns and missiles, but like weaponry, the military in general. Like, I remember when people started talking about like, oh, drones are terrifying or whatever. I'm like, oh, dude, I think that's great. My daughter wants to join the Air Force. My daughter wants to be a pilot, and I told her, I'm like, I'm not saying no. Okay, if that's what you want to do in life, go for it. But I'm like, I hope she becomes a drone pilot. I know that like any pilot in the military might be asked to do something that.
That's probably where it's all going anyway.
Well, and that's what I told my wife. I'm like, I mean, honestly, have you seen this stuff with like mobile remote operative? Like, I work from home. Okay, like I work from home now.
Yeah, the remotely operated drones.
Doctors worked remotely. I'm not going to say from home, but doctors did the little surgery with robot. What, 20 years ago? I mean, I remember growing up hearing about that.
Yeah.
So today, like that, of course, today there are farmers driving tractors remotely, not to mention the ones that are AI controlled, just going out there and plowing a field on its own, GPS and AI, and it goes out there and does it. But they can literally sit in. It was an excavator. That's what it was. It was a remote. The dude was talking about it. He was on TikTok or whatever. He has like a simulator in his house. That's what it looks like. But it's not a simulator. He logs into work at this quarry remotely into his giant Caterpillar while he sits in a lazy boy looking thing at home. I'm like, this is cool.
Everyone else sitting there sweating with a hard hat on, like, look at this guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when my wife was flying a few years ago, like flying planes, she was talking about like modern day planes will land themselves, can land themselves, but they're not allowed to because there should be, and I agree, there should be human control. We have self-driving cars, but semi-trucks, I agree, should not be self-driving. It's too much weight. It's very dangerous. You need a human. Obviously, a human can make errors, but so can a computer. Somebody was talking about like every time that a Tesla accident happened, that Elon was getting attacked on the news because they're like, oh, the self-driving car hit somebody in a crosswalk, and he was getting crap for it because he said someone gets hit in a crosswalk every day, and that they were like, oh my God, you're so callous, you don't care. And his rebuttal, this was on X, Twitter, whatever they call it these days. His rebuttal online was, yes, but mine will never happen again. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then he goes into this whole rant. He goes, every person who tragically has died in a Tesla, we have studied the event to the umpteenth degree. Then we click one button and no Tesla will commit that error ever again, ever. So yes, it cost one human life. But people die all the time in the sense of scientific exploration, space exploration. How many people died when cars were invented in the first place?
Yeah,
they actually had those videos of the bumpers that like deployed nets to catch people because people would walk in front of cars all the time. But at least he's like that will never happen again. I think that's really cool to see what technology goes to. And in the military, anytime somebody can sit in the air conditioning, I'm 100% for it. Like, we don't need to have somebody out there flying a patrol mission. Let the little thing fly its little circle path and let my kid be safe at home sitting somewhere else. At least that's my opinion. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
There's a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and I can't remember what the name of it is.
Total Recall.
No, it's not Total Recall.
I love that movie, though.
And I can't remember the name of it. But basically, it's in the future, which probably, given it came out in the 90s, is probably our past now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, we're past the time of Back to the Future Part 2.
I love when you watch old movies and they're like, in the year 2025. I'm like, oh, damn, that's next year. I'm old.
But anyway, you got this Schwarzenegger movie, and they have the cars drive themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's like
no one knows how to drive anymore.
Yeah.
And there's one scene where Arnold, he like the car won't go where he needs them to because it's kind of under control or whatever. So he takes manual control, and everyone in the car, they're like, oh my God, what are you doing? You can't do that. And they're like freaking out because no one's ever drove a car like they've ever seen.
Oh my God.
That's where it's going to go.
I like the idea of self-driving cars, and here's why. Because as technology increases, we're more distracted anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's stupid that like I'm not for a bunch of sorry there, Uncle Sam, but oh, wow, we're like staring at him anyway. I'm not for a bunch of regulations or laws telling me how I can or can't use technology. However, I think that with the technology we have, if your phone is going 70 or 80 miles an hour, if my car won't let me touch a button on it without saying like, oh, sorry, you need to be in park before you can type into the search bar, I don't see why we can't do that on a phone. I understand people are like, well, what if you're in the passenger seat or blah, blah, blah. Like, it's technology, guys. You look at your phone to unlock it. There's got to be some AI something that can tell when I've got one hand out like this and the other hand like this that I'm obviously shouldn't be on my phone. Again, talk about saving lives. That would save a lot of lives.
I just want cars that can drive themselves, man.
Oh,
I don't want to have to.
100%.
I as much as
That's
I
the worst
drive,
part about any commute anyway.
I drive all over the place, and some people like driving. I do not like driving.
I like driving if it's for the purpose of driving. Like if I'm going tomorrow, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in the car. We're going to go on a road trip, basically.
Yeah.
That, like, I'm sorry you have to drive. I'll drive. I don't mind. But like, I like if there's a purpose. Driving to work, the 45 minute, I hate it.
No.
Because I'm thinking to myself, this is an hour and a half of my life I can't get back.
Yeah. But if I can just get in a car, say, go to Google Maps, this is the address I want to go to.
Right.
And it just takes me there. And it's probably safer than me driving.
Right.
Right. And like, especially like Friday and Saturday nights when you have a large amount of people that are inebriated on the roads.
Well, yeah, that's true. But like, do you think it'll ever? Do you ever? I shouldn't say ever. Of course, it eventually will. But do you think that in our lifetime, like the near future, do you think it'll ever get to there is no non-self-driving car? Look, there's always going to be some dude rocking the old like '60s carbureted Mustang. Okay, like there's always going to be classic cars. But do you think it'll ever be like that's the exception to the rule? I remember when Teslas first came out, and it was like, oh, dude, a Tesla. Like you saw one. Right, it was almost a joke. Like maybe we should change the game from like Slug Bug to like Slug Tesla, right? Like you hit somebody in the shoulder when you see one because they were so rare. And now I'm like, my God, I feel like one in three cars that I see on the road, not in town, but like you're on the highway. It's not even a game anymore. Now it's super rare to see like an older bug or something. But do you think it'll in our lifetime get to a point where that's the exception to the rule, not the rule?
It depends, and here's why. A lot of people are wising up. Like, it's stupid to have an electric car that's charged by gas. It defeats the purpose.
No.
However,
I actually like that. I wish more cars had that.
If you have a big push for like, so Tesla also offers like a power wall. It's called a power wall, and you have solar panels on your roof. And it charges this power wall,
right?
Which if the power goes out, you have that. But also you can charge your Tesla with that.
Yeah.
If we went more in that direction, why wouldn't you? And solar panels are coming. They've come a long ways over the last 20 years, and they're continuing to get more.
It's the initial startup
effective
cost.
Yeah.
Unless it's subsidized, and then it's more reasonable.
I think if we go,
you really don't like a hybrid though. You don't.
I'm not talking about hybrids. I'm talking about electric cars.
Well, no. You said you don't like an electric car that's powered by fuel.
If I have an electric car and I go home,
right,
and I plug it in, where's it getting electricity from?
Magic jelly bean fuels. No, it's coming from a coal power plant or something
like that. Yeah,
sure. No, but what I mean is like a Prius. Well, I think now they actually have like all electric Priuses, but like when they first started, right, it had like a little engine, and then it had a battery, and it had an electric motor, and so like you could. Like that's a hybrid. Like I want like a Cybertruck, okay? But instead of having the stupid, what do they call the front trunk? Instead of having that, like just build like what's a really small fuel efficient like 2-cylinder diesel engine. I don't want it to drive the truck. I want it to be like a little diesel generator that only comes on when the battery gets to like 10%. And then, hey guys, we can still keep going because now I can recharge the truck while I'm driving till I get to the gas station where I can back up to a supercharger, top off the little 10-gallon diesel tank, and go on with my way. I wish they had that because an engine that runs at a consistent RPMs is quite efficient. A diesel engine is very efficient, and now with all the emission stuff on it, they're very clean.
I think if you look historically, there's been different intervals in human history.
Yeah.
Where technology could go one way or the other.
Well, I mean, we
Look-
had
look
electric
at-
cars before we had diesel cars.
Well, look at
or
Tesla.
gasoline cars.
Not Tesla the company, but like Nikola Tesla and his concepts of
Death rays.
free energy and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Wireless transmission towers.
Wireless transmission towers and all that.
Yeah.
That would
I
be
mean, he's
interesting to
written off
see.
as being crazy because of the stuff like the ray guns and stuff, but who knows? Maybe that was real. I mean,
We have countless technologies that we use today that either he invented, but either we still use it as is, or we have taken it and adapted it and gone with it. And
Right,
so
right.
the fact that he had a few ideas,
that were, quote, crazy, they might not have been crazy at all.
and when people start calling it crazy, you really have to wonder who started calling it crazy and why. It's the same thing with the mascot
true.
conversation we had last time.
Well-
which won't air until this is after.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
Anytime you see a mascot, you got to raise your eyes, and be like, why do they need a mascot?
No.
If they start saying these ideas are crazy,
no,
why are
no.
they saying it's crazy?
I've always told my wife, if you ever turn on the TV, and I don't care, this is not a political podcast. I do not care who you. This is the wrong time of the year. Yes, I say it's not political. It's 4th of July. We're taking our kids to go see
It's
fireworks.
being patriotic, political.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Are we patriotic? 100%. I love the 4th of July. I cannot wait. I have plans the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. I'm turning it into a 4-day Lollapalooza, and it's going to be so much fun. We're going to fireworks on the 3rd, fireworks on the 4th, fireworks on the 5th with a baseball game. And then on the 6th, I'm sitting and I'm going to grill some hot dogs and put my feet in the pool. Like, but I love it. This is my 2 favorite times of the year. I love 4th of July because it really reminds me of like being a kid again, going out, and my wife loves fireworks. I love watching the kids run around with fireworks and stuff. Like, that's just, I feel like it's a core memory that I get. You don't get a lot of core memories as an adult. Watching your kids run around with streamers while you got a cold beer in your hand, that's a core memory that I will
America.
remember. Yeah. Right, Uncle Sam? But I love that. So on the 3rd, we're going over here to the lake in Whitney. They have this fantastic little thing. It's like, pay $10. They've got a little private event place we're going to. It's going to be fun.
Cool.
Then on the 4th, do you like big crowds of people? Like, some people are freaked out by it. Some people are okay with it.
It just depends.
So in downtown Fort Worth, they have the Fort Worth 4th, which Fort Worth, the largest fireworks show in Texas, is this one. It's called the Fort Worth 4th. And it's I didn't know this until I was a fireman when I was younger. The reason why all these cities do this is because they have so many fires every year. And it's dangerous. It's not just the money side of it. It's very dangerous. They have so many fires that they just tell people, "Hey, look, don't waste your $20 on fireworks. We're going to throw a $250,000 fireworks show, and that way we don't have to worry about burning the city down. Please do not burn when you should not burn. It's very dangerous. This is the wrong time of the year.
Yeah.
Go to one of these shows, and it's usually fun. I don't like that a lot of these shows are going to drones now. I think drone shows are awesome. It's 4th
just
of July.
different, though.
It's fireworks. Like,
Yeah.
that's New Year's
Different.
Eve, fireworks.
There's some very impressive things that they do with drones, but they're not fireworks, man.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's like a couple of holidays that you can't replace it. Now, I did see one that did fireworks with drones. That was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. It was Star Wars. And so, like, when the Death Star blows up, the drones go up, and then as the firework explodes, all the drones, like, fly off. And I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. Like, that was neat. But that's the Fort Worth 4th. And my wife usually makes us go sit. They have, like, it's at the Panther Island Pavilion. It's really nice. If you've never been out there,
haven't.
it's pretty. But there's like 20,000 people in this huge area. I don't like big crowds like that because I know, like, how many,
Getting in and getting out of big
yeah,
crowds. is
I know
kind
how
of a
many
problem.
bad actors there can be sometimes. And it only takes one guy to throw a punch in a crowd like that for somebody to get trampled.
Then you're mosh pitting.
Yeah, and I got too many little kids to try to keep track
Yeah.
of in a mosh pit.
Yeah.
But she likes to go because the fireworks are amazing. So guess what I found?
A mosh pit?
No.
Oh.
Across the street, like on the other side of it's right there at the river, the Trinity River. And so like you're on one side of the Trinity River, then on the other side they do the fireworks. And then there's like a little embankment behind the embankment. So you're just as close to the fireworks as I sold it to my wife. You're just as close to the fireworks. There's a brewery. Okay? There's a brewery. I can't even remember.
Everybody wins.
I can't even remember that. Well, so I told my wife, like, what's the things you hated most about it? Like the Fort Worth Fourth. She's like, well, I love this and I love this. I said, no. I said, what's the things you didn't love? She's like, well, I love the fireworks. I'm like, okay, well, you can see it from both sides. It's just instead of seeing it this way, you're seeing it this way. She's like, well, I didn't like the heat. I know a place with air conditioning. She's like, oh, and my wife, she'd rather go pee behind a bush than use a porta potty. Like she despises.
Yeah, those are disgusting.
I was gonna say, I don't blame her. My time in the military, I hate them. Like I walk in there and immediately, the air dies. You start beating sweat. I'm like, this is terrible.
It's just a hot box.
It's a hot box.
And it stinks.
Yeah. So they have clean bathrooms, everything else. And she's like, yeah, but what's the cost? Because it's a ticketed event at this brewery. Kids are free. And I know what you're going to say. You're taking your kids to a brewery. Yes, I am. Because they have family stuff, because it's the 4th of July. They have cornhole and ping pong and all this other fun stuff. They have a food truck that's going to be out there doing barbecue. But anyways, $27 per adult to have air conditioning, clean bathrooms, and all that. And it comes with 4 pints of beer.
Nice.
And I'm like, sold. Like, my wife's like, okay, we'll try it this year. I'm like, great. So we're going to do that.
I mean, if you think like, what do you say a pint costs? $5, $6?
Yeah, you know what? One can of like ranch water, like the little seltzers. You know what one seltzer costs at the Fort Worth Fourth?
How much?
It's $9.
Oh my.
$9. A bottle of water is $6. Now they have water stations. You like walk up and have like a little filter, but it's hot. And I'm like, I told them last year, you can't bring in a cooler and ice. And I'm like, you can't bring in bottles of water. They're like, we don't want people sneaking in alcohol. I'm like, then get an alcohol sniffing dog. Like, this is like, it's 2024, guys. Someone's going to sneak it in anyway.
It's just like a movie theater, dude. They don't want you bringing. They want you buying their stuff.
I get that. Is that really all it is?
Yes.
It's just profits?
Yes.
Because it's a free event. They don't charge you anything to go.
They sell alcohol inside. Why do they care if you bring alcohol in?
The vendors do.
Exactly.
So that's how they get the vendors to
They
come
want
back.
Yes. They want you to buy your stuff when you get in.
I
Can you bring food in?
I saw one of the greatest life hacks of all time. I'm not going to say it's unethical, but it is genius. So, all right. A fantastic life hack. It's borderline unethical, but I saw somebody do this and I thought, this is genius. Okay.
Okay.
Geocaching, right? How does it work? Well, our phones are very, very good at storing information like location, right? We all have GPS. It's how your turn-by-turn directions and everything else. In fact, most of our phones are actually capable of like way more accuracy than just turn left ahead, right? Like you can literally walk around and get very close. So let's say, like this big outdoor event that's coming up, you know ahead of time that in this park or this area or this whatever, that there's going to be an event. Well, in theory, you could go out months in advance, dig a hole, and cache a bottle of your favorite sparkling water that you don't want to pay $9 for when you go to this concert or outdoor event or whatever many, many years or many, many months later, weeks later, whatever. Most people don't know. It's not hard to dig a hole in the ground. Glass bottles are, well, they're not water permeable, so you can store your alcohol and sparkling waters.
Or just find some bushes and throw like a ghillie suit.
Well, see, but somebody might walk through.
Yeah, but if you disguise it, it might.
You're right. I mean, you could disguise it.
Most
But
people
then,
are walking looking at their phones. They're not going to.
when you go back later, you just throw your little blanket down for your little picnic, and dig up a couple of sparkling waters. So do with that information as you will. But
Very wise.
Sparkling. If anybody comes by and they say, "What are you doing?" I'm digging for a well.
Okay. Well.
So we meet again. Anyways, all right. Well, that was
funny.
my whole story. Oh, so then after the that's what it was. So after the brewery on the 4th, then on the 5th we're gonna go up to Cleburne and go to a baseball game.
Oh, cool.
At the
Railroaders?
Yeah. So we're gonna go up there and have a baseball game because that's on the Friday night. They do fireworks.
Nice.
So fireworks on the 3rd on the lake, fireworks on the 4th downtown, which that's a lot of fun, but I don't usually get home till like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's the traffic of everybody leaving that thing is a nightmare.
Gosh, dude.
And like you basically just sit in your car and just lock the doors, put on music, and just chill. Like you're not going anywhere for a while because the only way to get out is they send you down through Cowtown, which is already a nightmare anyway. Normally, now when 20,000 people all exit a massive parking lot, that's the only direct. They won't let you go from there to downtown. You have to go and then cut across N20. Last year, I damn near ended up at the airport by the time I got out of there. Just like
My family and I, on July 4th, downtown, they do fireworks for like 10 minutes. We drive out there, watch fireworks for 10 minutes, say we did our 4th of July thing, and go home.
So you want to come spend 4 days with me?
No.
You should totally come with me.
I'm not huge on holidays in general.
You hear
Except
that?
for Halloween.
You hear that? Someone is crying right now. Uncle Sam is ashamed at you. He's going to drop his head.
Wow.
He is ashamed.
It's not the first time.
I just think I like it because I don't know. It reminds me of simpler times. Maybe that's what it is. Like when you're out there having a good time, there's always the music and stuff. My favorite thing is when they do like the jet flyover.
Oh, yeah.
I always think that's so cool. Which this is really, I love this. The first year we went was amazing. It was the coolest fireworks show I've ever seen in my life. They had an F-16 flyover afterburner like over the river, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Then the fireworks kick off. The fireworks were awesome. The closing kaboom, right, of the fireworks show was they had these 55-gallon drums. I don't know, jet fuel, whatever it was full of, lining the other side. There must have been like 10 of them. And, like it does a little like, starts shooting off all this stuff and everything blows up. And then they detonated these things. You ever been to like Six Flags and they used to do the Batman show and they had like, like the propane flames that would like kill, and like in the crowd, you're like, whoo, you can like feel the heat from a distance. Okay. This is like 200 yards away. This is like on the other bank, on the other side of the Trinity River from where they are. That thing kicked off, and I had flashbacks to house fires, man. Like I was on the other side, and I felt it on my eyelids. Like it was hot.
I was driving home, unrelated, but talking about fires. I was driving home on 35 last year, I guess, and there was a car. So it was 35, and you had kind of the concrete on each side.
Right.
There was a car pulled over, so it was still pretty close to the road, and it was on fire. Like this.
I was looking for my phone. I'm sorry. I was like, where's my phone? Where's my? Never mind. We're good. Sorry.
But this car was ablaze. Nobody was in or anything, but they had the fire department trying to put it out. But I drove by it.
You could feel it
I
through
could
the
feel
window.
it. I could feel it. It's like, dude, that is hot.
Oh yeah. Car fires are no joke.
Yeah.
Especially because like the engines nowadays are all like magnesium blocks. Mm-hmm. So as soon as magnesium, well, you're science-y.
Yeah.
When magnesium lights and then you put water on it,
Fun times.
it just gets hotter.
Yeah.
And explodes. It's awesome. That's why when you ever drive past like where there's a car fire, that's why there's like a hole in the concrete and the asphalt. Like it gets so hot it literally melts the concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great times.
Nice.
Great
Nice.
times.
I had something that I wanted to talk about. It's not 4th of July related, so if you
That's
feel like we're going to sideline the whole.
Sorry,
theme.
Uncle Sam, you've had your time. Your birthday's over. In case you haven't noticed, you and I probably aren't getting any younger, and we still like to drink and watch podcasts and hang out with friends like we're doing right now. before we get back to our discussion, I wanted to bring up a little topic that I love. After I drink, I don't like the way I feel, and you probably don't either. In fact, I like it less and less every single year I get older. Check out Reister, available on Amazon and this week's sponsor. Open this thing up and immediately grab yourself one of these little packets of sweet lemonade relief. Dump this into at least 16 ounces of water, chug this the night before, and you are going to be back to your good old self faster and easier than you have ever enjoyed before. See, Reister has all of the electrolytes and minerals that we need to help us feel better after a night of drinking, but most importantly, it has all of the extra boost to help our immune system and our liver get back into peak performance after having a night out with the friends. So grab yourself some Reister off of Amazon. Make sure you tell them thank you for sponsoring our wonderful podcast this week. And as always, back to the conversation.
We talked in the episode with Tyler, which was episode number 1. We talked briefly about Bigfoot and things like that, right? Do you recall?
I do.
And I was hinting...
You mean Gigantopithecus?
Gigantopithecus? Yeah.
Can you tell I've been listening to the episodes? 'Cause I still giggle in the car when I hear that.
I was thinking about... Well, first of all, I was thinking about that conversation with some of the comments that were made. And also, I had something else that I was kind of hinting at I wanted to go to, but we got sidetracked.
Okay.
But I want to point out a few things. Have you ever heard of coelacanth? The coelacanth?
I have never heard that word.
Okay.
Now, if you
The
tell me what
coelacanth.
it is, I might.
That's what it's known
might-
as. It has no, like...
What does it look like?
It's a big fish.
Okay. I was going to say, you're going to be like, it's a horse with a horn on its forehead. And be like, so are you.
That's cynocephaly. Oh, wait. That's
Oh, God.
cynocephaly is something
Never
else. Never mind.
I get
But
it.
anyway,
Okay, but say it again.
coelacanth.
Coelacanth. Coelacanth.
If you played Animal Crossing, you've caught it probably. But
Oh, okay.
it's a
Never
fish on a
played,
video
but-
game.
okay.
But anyway, I think it was like 1970 but prior to 1970, they had identified the coelacanth. It was they identified it as a fossil that they would sometimes find. It's like several million years ago that it went extinct, supposedly. And then in the 1970s, there was a fishing boat off the coast of Africa. They brought in their load of fish, and there was a scientist there, and he's like, "What kind of fish is that? What is that?" And they had some name for it, and they've been catching them for years.
Oh, so it's not like he discovered it. He just never seen one.
Well, hold on.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
These people in Africa had been catching it for years and using the skin as like a sandpaper, but they had no name for it. He's like, "What is this?" So he took it in and actually analyzed it, and they realized, holy crap, this is a coelacanth. This is something that was supposed to have been extinct for several million years, and it's still alive off the coast of Africa. And so, maybe not fast forward, but some other examples.
Fast slightly forward.
It might have been a little before this, actually. So this might have been the
And
fast forward.
what year was this again?
It was in the 1970s, I believe.
Okay.
Somewhere, maybe 60s, 70s. But some other things I want to talk about. These are more like in the Himalayas and China and stuff like that.
Okay.
There were people that the people that live in that area, and we talked a little bit about this. We always assume we know better than
Right.
than people that are
Mystics,
technologically
ancient-
inferior to us.
Yeah.
But there are people in the area around Tibet, I believe.
Because you
it
talked
was.
about that bush that people like. No, I'm sorry. I'm sidetracking. Continue.
Oh no, it's fine.
No, continue.
But they had talked about bears that were white and black, and of course we
Right.
got there like
There's no
that's
white
That's
and
the
black there.
stupidest thing. What are you talking about? and
Which, let's be honest, panda's pretty stupid.
pandas.
Yeah.
It was pandas.
I've heard that story before. That they
Yeah.
literally thought they were high.
Yeah.
They were like black and white bears.
That's
No,
the
there's
stupidest
two
thing.
different things.
And then the same thing with the mountain gorilla. I don't remember exactly where this was. It was somewhere in the Asian area, I believe. But the locals had lore about these gorillas that live in the
That's
mountains.
a good way of putting it, though, because you're absolutely. I'm not trying to stop you there.
No.
You're 100% right. If you'd never seen a zebra, I could see somebody saying like, "Oh, it's just a horse with black and white stripes."
Mm-hmm.
But a panda is not a bear that's black and white. Like, you're right. If you try to describe a panda to somebody who's never seen one, they'd be like, That's stupid. That's not a thing.
It's a bear, but it's black and white and eats sticks.
And it's not aggressive, and it's not mean, and it's so stupid.
They're
it
bears.
falls out of-
They're bears, dude.
Or
We're talking about
are they-
koalas, and koalas are also not nice.
I thought not polar bears. I can't even think.
They're bears, dude.
I thought pandas were actually like very not docile, like you go up and pet them, but I thought that they were very skittish. Which is like, is it the brown bear that's aggressive or is it the black bear? I always get it
I
wrong.
think it's the grizzly bear that's the most
Well,
aggressive.
yeah, oh.
And then probably the black bear.
Dude,
but-
go watch that movie Open Country. You'll never I can't sleep in a tent anymore. Like I was in the military sleeping in a tent in the middle of nowhere and I'm like, this is so great. I'm terrified now to sleep outside after seeing that movie.
But koalas and pandas, those are bears. They're still bears. They may not be like up there as far as the most aggressive, but they're still. But my
I
point,
can't picture
my point
a
is,
mean koala.
my point is, even today when we think we understand everything,
Yeah.
that we know it, we're still discovering new species of things.
Oh sure.
And so
Stuff
we're
comes
like,
out of the rainforest every other day, it feels like.
And people are like, well, we got all these phones everywhere and everything. So what? And
I
often,
feel like that was an attack at me.
often if the local people, the indigenous people or whatever, if they already have stories when you get there. So the thing is, this is where I'm going with this.
Okay. I'm tracking.
We have stories. These stories of Bigfoot did not start in 1960. The Native Americans have lore
start at the
of
beginning.
these have
Where
lore
did
of
it
these
originate?
creatures.
Okay. Like they told the original settlers,
Yeah,
like, hey, FYI, if you're walking around out there at night, we have stories of
well, it would
of a
depend on
large.
It would depend on the tribe. Some of them would be like, well, there's another tribe that lives in the mountains. They're really large.
I
and
didn't
they're
know it went back
peaceful,
that far.
And there might be other. There are Native American stories of like Nevada where they went to war with tribes of giants. There is actually a cave, and I believe it's in Nevada, where the Native Americans pushed the remnants of this giant tribe into this cave,
I've heard this
blocked the
story.
entrance, and set it ablaze
Right.
to wipe them out. And so these all across the United States, you have lore that pre-exists the Europeans coming, where they were fighting, they're conflicting, or they just acknowledged some kind of tribe or other.
I didn't
they
know
were
that it
always
was
considered
so
like
common throughout Native American culture. Like multiple tribes had the same thing. That I agree with.
well, it's kind
That's
of like the flood myth. There's flood myth all over the world too.
that's true. No, yeah.
But where I really wanted to go with this is, you believe?
Hold on, I gotta show. He literally brought me this sticker today because I love the X-Files. Okay, the X-Files is the TV show. Obviously, it's not fact, but I love those stories, and that's why we talk about this kind of stuff. Like I was literally watching the X-Files today.
love X Files. It's so 90s. This is 90s at its best, man.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
No,
I wanted
that's why I really like that we talk about this stuff because so much of it you only get like a one episode like talking about something. I didn't know the history goes back that far.
Yeah. There's literally totem poles.
With
like
Sasquatch on
with
it?
Sasquatch on it.
Really?
There are cave paintings.
I always thought it was like a much later thing, like gold miners. And,
No.
But I mean, they had to hear the story from somebody who told the story to
But
somebody.
here's what happened.
cool.
The Europeans, the white man, however you want to say it,
The settlers.
we settled
Yeah.
in these areas. The indigenous people had lore.
Right.
Like, that's stupid. We don't care. We're better. We know better. We know better than these guys. And then around the 60s, 70s, they started finding all these footprints. They're like, what in tarnation is this? What's going on?
That's
And
probably
then
exactly what they said too.
The natives were like, yeah, we've.
Oh, sorry. We have a very loud motorcycle driving by the
Okay.
garage.
But the Native Americans are like, yeah, we've told you about this. These are stories that have been passed down. That's the stories that they'll share with us. Keep in mind, like all these tribes have all these other traditions and lore
sure.
that they don't share with anybody. But
I didn't know that
yeah, why would they share with us?
because it's just a story. Like,
We pushed them. No.
well, okay, true. Yeah.
Relationships
Cover
aren't
your,
as good as
cover your ears, Uncle Sam. We're not talking about. We see no evil here.
Hey, remember those blankets you gave us that were infested? Anyway, let me tell you this story about my lore that's near and dear to us now. But where I wanted to go, I want to sideline with this. I know. I'm just saying, like, why would they? Why would they? And I don't blame them.
Hey, I mean this genuinely. You're right. You're right. They wouldn't. Why would you tell us a story? They're probably thinking, yeah, go out there. There's nothing out there. I hope they get eaten.
Okay, so these tribes have these lore of these other tribes of giants that they would sometimes war with. But sometimes, hold on, sometimes
I'm just listening. Like, what were they called? Do you know? I'm
it
just.
just depends on the. It's not like
Oh,
a
okay.
universal name.
Okay,
So
sorry.
like the Sasquatch was in the Northwest. That's what they called them. It was like a wild man of the woods.
Because
or
that's
whatever
an
that
Indian
means.
word.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But it just depends on.
What does it mean? I don't know.
I think it's like wild men of the woods or something like that.
Okay.
But sometimes you have lore where these tribes of giants would fight with other tribes of giants.
Okay.
And this is kind of where I was going because the rabbit hole gets weird.
We need to get the X-Files like theme song as a hot button for you over there that you can hit.
I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna lead with this. Several years ago, early 2000s, there used to be a show that would come on. Oh man, I totally. It was about cryptids though. It came on the History Channel. When history would
What's a
actually
crypt? Like crypts, like where we keep bodies.
no. Okay, a cryptid. Cryptid is Latin for like unknown. So cryptozoology.
Oh, yeah, okay,
is study
sorry.
of zoology of unknown
Yes,
creatures.
yes,
things
yes,
like
yes.
that.
Cryptozoology would be the study of Sasquatch, the study of chupacabra,
Yeah, yeah,
leprechauns,
sure.
fairies,
Yeah,
Loch Ness, all of that.
anything like that.
And it is a legitimate.
I can't
Okay, I
remember.
shouldn't say legitimate field of science. It
was
is
like-
it is a fringe field of science about people who study mythical creatures because, like you said, at one point a panda was probably considered cryptozoology. We talked about the Silo, whatever it was, the Tasmanian tiger. That was cryptozoology. The dude, because he was the one who started that.
Thylacine.
Thylacine, yeah. He was the guy that said, like, hey, I saw this thing and it looks like this, and they ran him out of the community, quack science. I think he is actually like the father of cryptozoology.
So the thylacine isn't really a. I don't know if you really consider it a cryptid because it is an actual creature.
Well, we
That-
know
we have
now.
physical evidence. It's not really a cryptid if you have physical evidence it existed.
Okay. Well,
a
but
cryptid means it,
we have footprints of Sasquatch.
but it's not physical evidence.
Okay, so you have
Like
to have.
we had bodies in labs of thylacines.
Okay.
We have taxidermied bodies. We have video.
You can go
very
to-
clear video.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
it went extinct. But the whole thing about thylacine is people are saying I don't think it's extinct because they're still having
Sightings and stuff, yeah.
sightings
Okay,
of it.
all right.
But that's different than saying like
No one has ever seen it,
Bigfoot is a
and-
cryptid, but as soon as there's actually a legitimate, scientifically recognized that the government has not hid from us body, which is a whole other thing.
Why would they hide a body of Sasquatch? Is it because it like? I know we're going off the rabbit hole, but like this, you're making me think. Why would they hide a body of something like Bigfoot? Is it because it like goes against the face of like what would you say mainstream weird derived from apes? So like it clashes with evolutionary thing. I mean, I don't see how it would because it'd be like, well, maybe we're
Think
both.
of all the different theories about Bigfoot. You could say, well, some people think Bigfoot's an alien, right? And so if you captured a Bigfoot and its DNA is unlike anything on Earth, you can't really. The government does not want to release any information that will disrupt the peace and harmony.
It's like if aliens
that
are
will-
real,
that will-
they wouldn't tell us because the stock market would crash, people would riot. It would be
Anything
terrible.
that might put their control at jeopardy.
Sure.
Right? They don't want to release. So, or what if you have a body of Bigfoot and you test it genetically and it's like, dude, it's basically us. We
It's
just made
related
some
to us.
changes to it. Or you have something that's like Bigfoot,
which
like,
is what we talked about on
which
the
is what we're talking
podcast
about with the whole
Tyler.
Anunnaki conversation.
Yeah, okay. So that's what
So-
I'm saying. It throws against what is the accepted. I shouldn't say accepted science, but it's the accepted theory of evolution because it clashes against that. It would bring years of study and everything else. So until we have hard physical, non-deniable, cannot ignore it.
Let's go down
evidence.
this because this is where it's going anyway.
No, I want to. I really do.
Let's just,
Somebody out there, hey,
Okay, hold on.
somebody out there is watching this and said, "I didn't know." If I didn't know that it was an Indian thing, somebody else didn't know.
Okay.
If somebody else didn't know that that's what the difference is between
there
Bigfoot
are
and something else.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's a lot of podcasts that are about this kind of thing I'm about to talk to you about.
Okay.
There are incidences where people, Bigfoot not so much, but there are other large cryptids that have been reported, not as often, but they exist, that that if they end up terminated, often it's because black helicopters come in and sanitize the area. And there are also reports, especially like in Alaska.
And then they just say it was a training mission.
Supposedly in Alaska, like the Sasquatches up there are very aggressive, and they will actually.
I thought those were like Yetis.
No, that's Himalayas.
Well, I mean, like, but a Sasquatch that's in the snow, I thought was a Yeti.
No, it's just
a
regional,
okay.
regional dialect, and there's variation depending on where they're at. But so like the Yetis,
there's Indian elephants and African elephants.
Well, the Yetis may have white
but
fur, but anyway, like in Alaska, like these Sasquatches are notoriously aggressive and much larger, and supposedly there's tales of actually people from the bases going out and hunting these. Like if they get too close to the military bases, they will go and exterminate them. And usually
That's terrifying.
these stories always end with a black helicopter coming in, taking the body. You didn't see anything. Scorched earth, no evidence, no blood tissue, like flamethrowers, no evidence, no tissue. I'm hinting at this, and this is really hard to swallow, but I'm just going to throw this out there.
Hey, you're the one. Normally, I'm the one cracking a smile over here when you're talking about stuff, and now you can't see me because I wasn't on me, but my mouth is just open like, wow. Like, okay.
There are ancient tales of a race of people.
Ancient as in what? Like,
medieval and prior to that.
Okay.
Called the cynocephali. Dog-headed men.
Okay.
There's even a Christian saint. I don't remember the name of it, but he is portrayed as a dog-headed man.
I have seen when I was in Europe, I have seen the paintings
and
in the Louvre.
There are ancient tales of these tribes of these people. They don't wear many clothes. They're cannibalistic. They live on these islands and everything. Cynocephali. There is, and where I was going with the whole History Channel is early 2000. It was Monster Quest is what it was. I looked it up. It was Monster Quest.
Oh, yeah,
It was
I
an
remember that show.
episode. It was like North American werewolves. It was like, what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hey.
And so
I hadn't thought about that. So is
hold on.
that the origination of that story? Like, is that where werewolves came from?
possibly.
That's
Possibly.
cool. Well, I
But I was
never
watching-
would have thought of that as being cryptozoology.
But I was watching this episode, and this kid reported like he saw like a werewolf in a cemetery. It's like that's the stupidest thing ever. But then, as I
Cynocephalus.
started listening to more and more podcasts, like this is something that people are starting to see, or at least they're starting to come out with it. You ever seen Underworld?
Yeah, I love that movie.
The,
Oh my
the
God.
werewolves in that?
Yeah. The Lycan.
Consistently,
Not just werewolves, yeah.
when people report seeing a dogman, is what they're called.
Right.
They say it looked like the werewolf off Underworld, or sometimes they'll say
Like Teen Wolf or something?
No, not Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf did not have a dog face. He was just a hairy faced person.
Okay. Yeah. Like the guy.
No,
Like
this
the,
is like a wolf
Snout.
face, a snout and everything.
Okay.
But also sometimes they'll compare it to American Werewolf in London or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And the thing is, when you listen to these stories, you have to listen for consistency in the stories.
Well, you're right. It's like the pyramids from one side of the planet to the other. It's
Yeah.
like why would people do this? When you find something that's a similarity, you're going, okay, that can't just be a coincidence.
But people will they'll report, they'll see like often what they'll start off with is they'll see a wolf, and they'll say like this wolf was like the size of a cow, like it was massive. And what they'll say,
My daughter just joined my live. Sorry, I had to like. I looked over there and saw that my daughter's over there watching me on
Nice.
TikTok right now.
but they'll say like I saw this wolf and it was like the size of a cow. It was huge.
Wow.
And then, and this is the thing, consistently people will say this. It will stand up. It has the limbs of a wolf, like his feet, or like like the wolf shape and everything.
Right.
But they'll say it will stand up, and you can hear popping sounds as the bones like shift to support the weight. Consistently, a guy in Georgia might tell this story. A guy in Nevada might tell a story, and they always point these things out. Their eyes glow in the dark. They have the same shaped feet. They stand up. And the
cool.
thing is, where you have parts of the United States, man, you have parts of the United States where this area, there's Bigfoot sightings.
Right.
This area, there's dogman sightings.
And
if
the
you
area
see
in
it
the middle, it's both.
It's where you see them fighting. There'll be conflicts and things like that. There's a really sad story. It's called The Land Between the Lakes. It's somewhere like Tennessee, Kentucky area. This is supposed to be like a really bad area for this, but it's also like a it's like either a state park or a national park. But there's a really sad story of these officials that went in for like missing persons, and it was a whole family that went missing, like children, and they found the camper they were in, and just slaughter everywhere. Like the whole family was slaughtered, but they could not account for one. It was a little girl, and this is what really makes me sad, because when children get hurt, it really makes me sad.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Several hundred feet away, they found the girl in a tree, impaled on a limb, like 20 feet in the air. Let me be clear. The reports of these things standing up are about 12 feet high.
Wow.
Like standing up. It is terrifying. By the way, this trip we're going to take tomorrow, there's been reports around this area too. So keep your eyes.
I'm telling you, we are gonna get the sound effect added to the little board.
But
Wow.
but it's so sad. But yeah, yeah. There's another story. I can't remember the name. It's like a Lockett Ranch or something like this.
Okay.
I can't. You have to look it up. I'll have to find it and send it to you. It's like a whole story. This family bought this new house somewhere here in the United States. It was an old ranch, and they're like, "This is like a steal. Why is nobody?"
Oh
why is-"
God.
And
It's the dogman.
and so they get out there and they get moved in, and they're sitting out there on their front porch, and they've been there for like a month or two, like a few weird things, but they kind of blow it off. They sit out on the front porch and they start seeing like eye shine, numerous eye shines in this field in front of their front porch. And they're like, what on earth is that? And then these things start standing up. This eye shine goes from like
Height
4 feet off
yeah.
the ground to like 12 feet off the ground, and they're freaked out, and they go inside, and they go up on their second story, and they look out, and they turn on like their lights or whatever. I don't know, or maybe these things were just outside the lights, and then it went inside. These things came within the lights, and like, holy crap, these things should not exist. And so they lock all their doors, and like these things like jumping up on the second, like you got the
Why has nobody made a movie about this?
like dog soldiers. There's tons of werewolf movies.
Well,
But anyway,
I mean, yeah, you're
but
right. Yeah.
they call 911, and they're like, hey, there's some animals around our house, and they're like, 911 was like, yeah, we don't deal with animals. Sorry, bye.
Because they know.
They know. They basically, I mean, that's their thing. Like, hey, we don't deal with animal issues. We only, and then they like don't answer again when they call back. Yeah, they know. They know. This is like, I'm telling you, dude, this is a whole phenomena. But my point is like, there are stories where people will like, there's one in particular, like this guy was, granted, these are just stories, right? But this dude was camping on like a national park, and he comes around the corner, and like this Bigfoot and this dogman are fighting, and like ultimately like the dogman dies and Bigfoot runs off or something, and this guy freaks out and he runs off. He's like, you know what? There's something really wild out there that left evidence. I want to go out there and try to collect it and get my nerve. Like next day kind of thing. He goes back, and like 100-yard radius, everything is scorched.
Wow.
Like no evidence at all. And so the government is, if you believe these stories, the government's aware of this, and they hide these things.
Wow.
So you could also say like, where do all these things come from? Like, what is this? And there's some people that believe, like the ancient stories like the Chimera,
Right.
or the ancient stories of the Nephilim, these giants that came to
Right,
Earth
right.
and bred, and they
Well,
had
like
these.
you just said, the stories of the Indians fighting against a tribe of giants. Like,
But a lot of people think like the Nephilim were the offspring of the giants. A lot of people think that when
you're talking about like biblical Nephilim.
yeah,
Right,
and
right.
I say a lot of people, not like a lot of people that are in my circles, not like normal people, right? But
I'm in your circle.
but they link the dots. So like, well, if the Anunnaki allegedly came to Earth and purported genetic experience trying to create this supreme,
maybe they had a couple of versions.
you're always gonna have a couple of versions.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: you have Bigfoot, you have Dogman, but also you have other things like Goatman. That's a thing.
Yeah.
People say they see that Mothman.
That is the goat man's oh my God, what country? Mexico. That's like a big thing in Mexico.
It's here in Texas too.
Well, yeah, because we're close to Mexico. Yeah. But yeah. Which, hey, I mean, like you said, they all kind of border up against each other. It's like
there's oh dude, I got so many stories. There's also, I'll tell you 2 more stories and we'll get off this if you want to.
No, I mean, it's interesting. So, I don't know enough about it to ask you any more deep probing questions. There's
a location in Michigan called Bray Road.
Okay.
And this is like one of the first big werewolf stories out of the United States. Like the first big famous one. There's an older one, but it's not as famous. But it's the Beast of Bray Road, and basically there was
the Beast of Bray Road.
The Beast of Bray Road.
Okay.
It's not even that long ago, but it was like a car accident. Someone was driving, and they either saw it or they hit it. I think they hit it. No. They saw it. They're driving down the road. It's a highway, and they saw this like they thought it was a deer in the ditch. And they as they drive by, it wasn't a deer. Something had a deer in its hands, and it was squatting down in the ditch, eating the deer, and it looked at them as they came by. And so this person called the newspaper, and it started this whole phenomenon. It's called the Beast of Bray Road. Supposedly, there's older stories of like wagon incidences and stuff. There's one in Texas, just south of San Antonio, which supposedly on the border of the United States and Mexico. In certain areas, there's a lot of these there too. But in fact, there's also something called the Dogman Triangle in Texas, which goes, it's either from Austin or San Antonio to Houston to DFW. So everything in that triangle.
So us.
Yeah, it's in this Dogman Triangle. But this was a much older story.
And it also makes sense why a creature like that would avoid people too. I mean,
of course.
100%. I mean, there's a reason why you don't see, I mean, we live in Texas. There's coyotes, but even that is.
Well, sometimes these things even run coyotes, supposedly.
Wow.
But anyway, it was a long time ago. I don't know how long ago. I want to say like pioneer days. And this rancher or farmer south of San Antonio had a son. And his son, he had concerns about his son. Like he was not shaping up to be very manly in his eyes, right? And so one day he gave his son an ultimatum. It's like, you're going to take this gun, you're going to go out in the woods, and you're going to shoot a deer tonight. And so he sent his son to the woods, and his son came back like ghost pale. He's like, Dad, there is a monster in those woods. I do not want to go back. And he's like, you're just being dumb. You will go back outside. You will find a deer, and you will shoot it, and you will grow up. And his son never came back. And so they organized a search party the next morning, and they found his son being actively eaten by one of these creatures in the woods.
Wow.
And it was like a big enough party that they scared it off or whatever. But like it ruined that guy.
I mean, you look at all the cultures all over the world. It actually absolutely makes sense because you look at the stories of like Beauty and the Beast. I mean, right? I mean, that could very easily be some type of monster that lives somewhere or whatever. It doesn't have to be a prince that had an evil curse. That would be the story that people came up with to explain it. But it doesn't have to necessarily be the actual story.
Yeah.
Some beast came into a town and took this poor girl and ran off, and they're going to be like, all the kids know what happened, and they're like, oh, yeah, it was just a prince, and he kissed her, and true love, and turned her back into a normal person, happily ever after. Okay, now go find the deer out in the woods because we need to eat tonight. Like,
so that was I hinted at this in the last conversation. The beast of, I'm going to butcher the name, but the beast of Guévedon or whatever. This is a French story from medieval times.
I mean, that's where Beauty and the Beast started. It's French.
It was a large wolf that was coming into town and dragging people away.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's held as like the first werewolf story. They considered it a werewolf. It was but it's not as though it's something that. To be clear, we're not talking about like a giant 12-foot cryptid that is a human during the day. This is a way of life for this thing. This is what it is.
Because the story would be with something like a werewolf is, as civilization progresses, some people have seen it, some people haven't seen it, and so you have to start coming up with a story to explain it. And so you're like, hey, how come Justin has seen this creature and it dragged off his kid off into the woods or whatever, and then like the party comes back like, yeah, we saw it too, and everyone else is like, well, how come we've never seen it? somebody would come up with the explanation of like, well, we must not be able to see them all the time because they must transmorph, or they turn into something else. You could see how suddenly you take something that is legitimate or possibly legitimate, and now you have to come up with an explanation. It could just be something as simple as, oh, they hibernate and they go and they sleep in a cave or something during the day. That's why we haven't seen them, or they only are nocturnal, or I mean, the whole thing about vampires and all of that could be cannibals that were just explained in a different way, or there's lots of creatures that are nocturnal that you just don't see during the day, and it would be like just society's attempt of explaining it, and then that turns into its own story.
There are stories of, going back to Bigfoot, there's stories of people driving down the highway going 60 miles an hour and looking over, and this thing's keeping pace with their car.
Wow.
Like, these things can run. And if you took a man in a ghillie suit and you didn't know he was there, you didn't have any way of detecting him, and he's lived in the woods his whole life. He can move without making noise,
right?
Unless you want him to know he's there, which they sometimes do.
Well,
he's hiding behind a tree.
There's lots of large creatures that don't make sound.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy, but
my point is, like, we say, well, why don't we ever see him? Why don't we ever catch it? First of all, if this thing wanted to get away from you fast, I mean, there are stories.
I
like,
mean, a deer takes off running and it disappears into the woods, and that's not even a large creature.
And granted, people hear these things run in the woods, like running away, and it sounds like a freight train going through.
Because they just ruin camping for me. Because anytime I hear like a twig snap, now I'm going to be like, I'm not going out there.
Yeah, there's things, man. I'm just saying.
Hey,
I'm saying
now the next time my wife, when we go camping, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna pack something. I always like if I've gone out camping, I always took like a 22 or a shotgun or something with me anyway, because we live in Texas in our area. I'm not worried about coyotes. You clap your hands loud and they run off. I'm not terribly worried about something. But like wild hogs are a thing in Texas. They're
everywhere.
Snakes, all right, and all that kind of stuff. And yes, I know you're not supposed to discharge a firearm in like a state park or something. But if there was a wild hog that's like, you're not supposed to discharge a firearm at a state park. However, if there's something actively trying to harm you, I would much rather deal with the ramifications of, hey, what's the old expression? I'd rather be tried by 12 than killed by 6. I'd much rather have to go to court and be like, yeah, here's the pictures. This 400-pound wild boar with tusks was trying to get one of my kids, and yeah, I fired as many rounds as I brought with me. And no judge would give you qualms about it. But
no, not in Texas anyway.
Not in Texas, right? But you're right. Like, I mean, there's stay strapped or get silenced.
Well, they have no effect on those things.
Unless they're silver bullets.
No, it's not. It's not a silver thing. It's possibly, but
no, say, like,
the stories where these things are taken down.
Those things come from that. I'm not trying to derail it, but like, okay, so we have stories of these creatures. We have stories of some things that could be explained. Like I said, maybe not explained, but stories that would be added to it. Like, oh, well, we can't find these creatures, and so somebody would be like, well, if you can't find them, it's because during the day they look different, or like they come up with an explanation. But why would something like that become a thing? Like
evolutionary?
No, I mean evolution. Like not evolutionary, but like of the story, the evolution of the story or the myth. Where does something like with werewolves? Where does something like silver harms them? Vampires. Okay, cool. So vampires are these scary creatures, and they, whatever. They sleep in a coffin during the day, and they come out at night, and blah 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 blah. They're immortal, and the only way to kill them is this or this or this. But like, where do you think with a story like that do we get the like, oh, all you have to do is like make a cross with your finger, and it's like like repels them, or oh, the only way to kill them is a wood stake through the heart. Like, how do you think those things get put into lore? Like, did somebody shoot a thing with a silver bullet and actually kill one, and then that just became like a story?
Silver has alchemical.
Is it kind of back to that thing we talked about before? That like,
yeah, and a lot of that is like, well, it's like vampires. Say vampires are real. I'm not saying they're not. They might be. Who knows? But say they're real. You have.
Well, there's not a big stretch to go from cannibals, which we know are real.
Yeah.
What was the old joke? When I watched TV as a kid, I thought quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem in my life, right? It's like, because it gets overdone. But quicksand's a real thing. It's not as prevalent. It's not as common, but it is a real thing. I'm not saying vampires are real, but there are stories about things that for a reason there is a myth tied to how to get rid of them.
Well, let's say this, and depending on how you want to do the timeline, and I don't know, there's probably an official way you say this. According to Christian lore, Christian belief system, no, I wouldn't say lore, Christian belief system,
Christian doctrine.
Jesus died on the cross.
Right.
Right. And I don't know if that means he died on like 0 BC or if he was born on 0 BC and died 33 AD. I don't know. But this whole like this offends vampires. So you're saying 1 BC it was just like a lowercase t and then all of a sudden it's something that's offensive to them? You know, a lot of this is, and we talked about
and
this.
then there's also the debate that, I mean, there's, if you watch a movie like Spartacus, the old one, no, I'm not talking about newer, but like you watch the old, who was the actor in Spartacus? I always get it wrong.
Blood and Sand?
No, I'm talking about like the old.
I don't know.
It was still in color, but like in the 60s, the Spartacus, he's crucified at the end of it.
Well, he was in the series too, the recent series.
Well, right, but there is very little evidence. I mean, okay, we've had capital punishment in this country for a long time. There's been capital punishment throughout history, from the guillotine to hanging to firing squads, whatever. But I'm trying to think where I was going with this. Like I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
With get me back on track here. No, I'm sorry.
I don't remember what I was saying now.
Yeah, no. Well, it's really
to you, so.
no, it's really deep, and there's a whole lot to this. I'm trying to like piece all the things together. Oh, like crucifixion. That was a form of capital punishment that the Romans instituted. So it's documented. We have documented proof in history.
Yeah.
People wrote about it in movies. We have depicted it in not a lot of instances. Unless it's coming from a Christian storytelling standpoint, it wasn't a cross as we know it. The emblem of the T, right? Like the cross is only pictured in reference to Jesus. We know that the Romans crucified people. Crucifixion, that's the word. That's what they did. But as it's depicted or explained or documented in historical evidence, whatever you want to call that, people writing in their journals, whatever, people of the time described crucifixion, it was a pull. Today there are several Christian religions that don't believe that he was on a cross, that he was on a crucifixion pole, which was the emblem of just like a telephone pole. I'm trying to remember the thing. I did like a whole. It's way back when, as I was raised, Jehovah's Witnesses, we've talked before, they don't believe in a cross, like a cross member at the top, cross. Like what, if you picture a cross, if you're thinking of like the necklace, they don't believe, not every religion believes in that symbol, the cross. Crucifixion, as described in some historical evidence, was just a pull, and it said that the hands of the convicted would be bound above the head, and a nail was driven into the palms. So again, if your hands are like this, there would be 2 nails, right? They look at that as it's described as a nail between the palms directly over your head. And there was like a little block at the bottom that your feet would be on. And so your body was basically, your arms are straight up over your head and your feet were dangling, because we know, in Christian doctrine that the prophecy about Jesus that he wouldn't this is not a religious podcast, but it kind of ties into this, like that he would not have a bone broken on his body. And so like the reason why that was a prophecy and why when he died it didn't happen was because the Roman soldiers didn't break his legs. In crucifixion, again, it's documented. We know how the corporal punishment was dealt. Their hands were bound, a nail was driven between the palms, and they were suspended, and then they could stand on this little block of wood that was on the bottom as a way to cruelly punish them for days. At some point, they wanted them to die. It was corporal punishment. So they would come by and use a rod and break their legs so that they could no longer support the weight of their body, so that now your arms would be pulled, which as you and I both with medical backgrounds, if your arms are up over your head and it pulls on your torso, it compresses the diaphragm. It cannot operate correctly, and so you go into respiratory arrest and eventually would die from that. You want to put your arms over your head and hang like that for a little while, and you'll know exactly what I mean. It's not comfortable, and it's very difficult to breathe. That story of how he was crucified, I'm not going to say contradicts evidence of history. We also know that the plaque, right? They had like a plaque above them that would say what their crime was. And they would put these people as they were going into a town, right? Like that's where, and that's why I brought up Spartacus. At the final scene, it says like going into whatever the city was in the movie. I don't remember. And they had like the criminals lined up on these poles, and they would have, basically it was a warning. Hey, if you're coming into our town, we don't tolerate these crimes. You could look at it and be like, okay, well, while I'm here, this dude got crucified because he committed murder. I probably shouldn't try this in this town. And it would say above him, so-and-so crucified for the crime of whatever. Jesus had one over his head that it was mocking him. I always get it wrong. Whatever it said, like
King of the Jews, I think.
Here lies King of the Jews. Yeah, something along those lines. Above him, obviously, as a way of mocking him. Maybe they did do it different. Maybe he was on a different thing. Maybe they were trying to make it like a statement, like, hey, all these people have committed crimes, because as he was executed, there was people on either side of him that were being crucified. That's in the Bible. And maybe they had some differing, structure or style to it or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of one of those little things of it. We know it's documented that that's not how they normally did it. I'm not saying Jesus was not on a cross. I don't know. I wasn't there. There's lots of evidence that say he was crucified like that. We have the Bible. It says that he was crucified. There's movies both ways. There's shows both ways. There's history both ways.
I want to go down this rabbit hole with you because this is
not a
interesting
religious
to me.
podcast, guys.
And this isn't religious, what I'm about to say. We talked about this very briefly earlier. All across the world, all these cultures that have been previously uninterconnected have stories in their lore about some kind of a flood myth.
Right.
And it's just documented as fact for them. Also,
well, I mean, floods happened. So, but it's that they all have a story around the same time period, because that's the key.
The Younger Dryas period, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not there's today. When you turn on the news, there's the massive dam that's like being overflooded up here. And it happened. It's that all of these civilizations documented in the same time period a flood of, but as use the parlance, biblical proportions.
Yeah.
That they all took a special note to document more than any other time.
It's not saying, hey, several thousand years ago this river flooded. It was a pretty bad thing. No, it's like you're saying, everything flooded. The world flooded. And usually there's somebody, an enigmatic figure that came and instructed them, hey, there's going to be a flood coming.
Right.
You need to build something. Here's the specifications. This is how you'll survive. My point is, so like you have something. These all had to stem from something that was actual physically.
Somebody had to see it to actually write that down.
Yeah. We're talking about this cross concept, right? You're talking about like the vampires, talking about the vampires and stuff. Christianity,
If vampires existed, they would have had to exist for a long time. Why all of a sudden is that now repelling them later? Yeah.
Well, we're assuming that's why it would repel them.
Right.
And I'm not trying to get like sacrilegious here, but let's look at this.
Oh, maybe like the significance of what he died on imbued that particular
Hold on.
shape or whatever.
Let me explain.
Yeah, please.
All around the world, you also have cross-like imagery.
Well, yeah, prior to Christianity.
Prior to Christianity.
The ancient Celtics had the Celtic cross, which predates Christianity. In fact, some people say that Christianity adopted it from them.
Well, the Egyptians had the Ankh.
Yeah, that's true.
Thing.
That's true.
Unfortunately, the Nazis really took it and did something terrible with it. But
the symbol,
swastika,
well, because it goes the opposite direction, right? One way it was an emblem of the sun, and the other way was the emblem of fascism.
Yeah, and so, and even here in the United States, the Native Americans, I couldn't give you exact, but I've seen the artwork. I mean, that's the thing also.
Yeah.
Look at,
Well, if you look at a dream catcher, it usually has a cross symbol
look
of
at New Mexico's
structure.
flag. Look at New Mexico's flag.
Yeah,
Isn't it
yeah,
the flag?
exactly.
Yeah, they got the,
That's a dream catcher. Yeah.
yeah. And so there's, why is this imagery?
So I've actually thought about this. If not to derail you, but I have a theory. I don't have any evidence to back it up, but somebody, I think it was Skip that brought this up once. Why a 90-degree? Because that's what it is. It's a 90-degree cross or an X, right? Everywhere from X marks a spot on a map to like our fascination with that, the 90-degree. He brought up a valid point to me one time. I think it was Skip. If not, I'm going to give him credit anyway because he sounds very Skip-ish.
Yeah, it's a safe thing to do.
Yeah. It's that it is not, straight lines are not found in nature, right? Well, we say that all the time, but like a tree is relatively a straight line. Like streams tend to be in straight lines, and over time it wanders from that path. Originally, when it's a waterfall falls in straight lines, all of that. But the fascination with a 90-degree angle was that it is the symbolism of man-made. It is something that has to be constructed. A 90-degree angle, a square, circles and spheres exist in nature. A drop of water takes that shape. Snowflakes take on a specific structure or shape that, when viewed, can be very circular in nature. Those things aren't necessarily man-made. If you see a straight line, especially if you see an intersecting 90-degree angle, it does. 45-degree angles appear in nature. Trees tend to grow and then they branch off, usually in 45s and 33s, which is why they're common degrees of angles. That's why we use them today. But a 90-degree cross is not something that appears in nature. It is indicative of something man-made.
Well, 45 degrees in nature makes sense. It's the strongest angle. It's the strongest angle. As far as the 45-degree triangle, it's the strongest triangle.
Yeah.
A 45-degree angle for a projectile will go the furthest, all things being equal.
Yeah, like if you fire a bullet at 45
Like a
degrees,
cannon,
it goes
So
the
45
farthest.
is a very interesting number. So it's very interesting you said that, because where I was going to go with this, talking about straight lines,
It's organic and it still
straight
goes to
lines
something.
being man-made. There is some. You really have to kind of drink the Kool-Aid to really even be in
As
the mindset.
long as it's not antifreeze, pour me a
No.
cup.
There are some people that say, well, the reason that this is universal, both things that we talked about, and the reason that we use straight lines for the cross, which, like you said, represents something man-made, is because this was a symbolism used in the first civilization that was wiped out by a great flood,
Right. Which is why so many civilizations all over the place use it.
which was Atlantis.
Oh, I was going to go back further than that. I was thinking like Babel.
Well, supposedly Atlantis predates everything. Well, depending on, there's some people that say there's older civilizations that Atlantis came from also. But even the Egyptians, when it was either Plato.
Well, and something like the Egyptian, we referred to the Egyptian Empire as if it's not. We refer going back to not to derail this. Going back to Uncle Sam. Okay, what is this? His like almost 250th birthday.
Does it look a day over 60?
No, you look great. You look great. But what I'm saying is as an American, we tend to think in a very, very short window of time. I don't know if you do. How long did the Egyptian Empire span? We've said this before. Like Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of the iPad than she did to Tutankhamun, which was not one of the earliest, but an earlier, well-known pharaoh of Egypt. That is a massive span of time. Mammoths still walked the earth when the pyramids were being built. I mean, that it goes, well, possibly. Hold on, I gotta get your face. You're like, I mean, maybe. But I'm saying, like, it goes back so far that of course, it came from an ancient civilization. We lose track of the span of time that some of these civilizations could have existed in.
Yeah.
And like you said, when I think of Atlantis, I think of it around the time of like castles, lords, like but that's what I'm saying. But I know, like in my mind, that's where I put it as kind of like ancient English period, but we're talking thousands of years ago. Because they say the human race is what? I don't know.
Several
10,000 years is usually about what I hear, right?
Even though the more we study archaeology, the further back that gets pushed.
But
I think
like
go back a teple. Go back. I
Yeah, I know what you're talking
That's
about.
like 15,000, I think.
But where would let's just pick a number for the sake of debate. Let's say humans, is 10,000 years old. We're in the blip at the very, very end of that civilization in terms of us, but you and I, us. A civilization like Atlantis, we're talking 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, right?
In ancient Greece, when Plato, I believe it was Plato, it may have been Socrates, but one of them traveled to Egypt to partake of the mysteries that were offered at the mystery schools there, met with a priest, and he asked, where did your... No, this was a story. Anyway, you look it up. So we know this is a story from either Plato or Socrates, but it's older that was conveyed to him. And when Egyptian priests were asked, how old is Egypt? They're like, all this stuff was here when we came. We came from Atlantis. We came from another place.
Is there actually like writings, but like, I mean, because we have to like read hieroglyphs, right, to understand anything from that time period. Is there hieroglyphic evidence of them talking about that, or is it just someone wrote a story about like? I don't know how.
This was a oral tradition that was conveyed. So I'm talking about a mystery school, right? A mystery school, which is something.
Well, can we explain what that is?
So
a little bit, like
a mystery school. Is basically
you've told me, but you had to tell me this story, and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, these were prolific all throughout ancient history, and they usually
very well documented. Like we know this is the fact.
We know that they existed. We don't necessarily know what happened or what they guarded, but they usually
the mystery.
They usually had some kind of we know like Pythagoras, for example, like the math he taught. He did not teach these things. He did not study and there was esoteric aspects of this too. He did not. So to become a member of the Pythagorean mystery school, you had to take a vow of silence.
And Pythagoras is like where we get
Pythagorean theorem.
Right, which I'm very sorry. Chicken farmer, okay? What is the Pythagorean theory? I mean, I know it. Anybody watching, we probably learned it in high school, but what is it? Because it's a math thing it's not a theory. It is a mathematical fact.
Yeah, it's used to... If you know two sides of a triangle, you find the other side of a triangle, basically. A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
That's the Pythagorean theory.
Yeah, it's more complex than that. Pythagorean theorem was actually even used anciently to prove the earth was round.
Okay, so and that's what I was getting at. So it's the reason why these things, and you're going to go into this. I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, but when you explained the story to me, that I remembered the Pythagorean theory sticking in my head. You're right. It was used to prove. Discover, because people had said it was round for a long time. It was used to prove that the earth was round because they took the shadow and it cast the shadow, and they were like, oh, we know that's how they found the circumference of the earth.
Yeah,
thousands of years ago. And the reason why it couldn't be taught, why it had to be a mystery, a secret society, if you will, was because it flew against church doctrine at the time. Because at that time, the kings and the church said the earth was flat and you can't sail too far because you'll fall off. Most people don't know that Columbus thought he was going... Well, Columbus didn't think so, but nobody wanted to fund his expedition because they all said, you're on a suicide mission. You're going to fall off the edge of the earth. And he said, no. It's a sphere. We're going to go over there. We're either going to come around and find, because that's why they called them Indians. They thought they were going to go all the way around and find India, but they didn't. They found America, and that's why they didn't want to fund it. They thought it was a suicide mission. He was going to fall off the edge of the earth. You couldn't talk about that. You couldn't tell people that because it was contrary to doctrine. And so, in a
not
way
at
of
this point
teaching
necessarily.
it, oh, okay. So, because I mean that
This is like
predates all
ancient
of it.
Greece. The church was really bad about this, but we're talking about something that was true at a certain point. But you got to keep in mind when most people, like Greece had education, they had programs, you could go to school and stuff. But there's a certain knowledge. Knowledge was also power, and the wrong knowledge in the wrong hands.
Greek fire.
I was going to give that as an example.
Yeah,
We don't know
yeah.
how it was made, but we know it was.
It's a closely guarded secret.
But we know it was
because
effective. How
we
did you learn
know
how to
it
make Greek
happened.
fire?
you went to
had
mystery school.
Probably had to go to mystery school. But anyway, to become a
Interesting.
member of the Pythagorean mystery school, you took a vow of silence. They accepted men and women.
Yeah, you said
And
you
I-
had to like basically to get in. You took a vow.
Yeah.
and it was like come back after, and it wasn't a vow of silence. Like I'm not going to talk about Fight Club. No, it was like I'm not going to utter a word ever.
And I want to say, I
For
think it was like
years.
7 years.
Right.
And if at any point you broke that vow,
You
did not-
couldn't even reapply,
no.
and it was because you had to prove you could keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And-
Exactly.
That's that when you told me that story instantly, when you hear something you're like, okay, that makes sense. When you told me that, some shit up here clicked. I was like, wow. I mean, that's
But there were some ancient
cool.
philosophers that were well known. And the thing is, if you joined a mystery school and you demonstrated you can keep your mouth shut and you're a trustworthy person, if I was to go to I joined the example we just gave, I totally forgot it.
the Pythagorean.
Pythagorean mystery school.
Yeah.
You kept your mouth shut for seven years. You joined that, you learned the mysteries. You're like, that's really interesting. I want more knowledge. I went to another
Then they would
mystery school.
recommend, oh, hey, if you like that, you're going to love the
there's still-
Jones
There's
Mystery
still-
School over
I'm
here.
sure there's still processes, but they were like, hey, this guy's already proven he can keep his mouth shut.
'cause
But
it was
my
like a
point is,
resume.
like some of these ancient philosophers, the reason they were so wise is they collected titles. Like we joke about it now in organizations that
It's like
that
degrees
people
at an
do it.
institution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right.
Higher
Like,
institutional
yeah.
learning.
But-
Except imagine if you graduated as a doctor from Harvard Medical School and then somebody said, hey, teach me.
But
No.
but yeah, whichever individual it was, I'd have to actually look it up. But the one that's written about, he went to Egypt and underwent the mystery schools there, and that was part of what
Which
they.
is where you said, and in next week's episode, which you haven't heard yet, but when we talked to Joe, you were talking about chem being the origin of the word chemistry came from the mystery schools of Egypt. Chem is an Egyptian word that
So-
meant what?
No, Kim was an Egyptian word. I believe Kim meant black because there's black soil around the Nile. But it was anciently Kim was what referred to what we call Egypt today.
But like
chemistry
if you went
is
to
where
if you went to a mystery school, you were learning in Egypt, you were potentially learning the origin of what we today would know as chemistry,
Well,
which would have
alchemy.
alchemy,
Yeah.
which would have been damn near magic at that time. I mean, look at today. If anybody knows today, everyone knows today, hey, don't mix bleach with any ammonia product in your house when you're cleaning because it'll kill you. Someone had to figure that out a long time ago, unfortunately, with trial and error, to know, hey, this and this, we don't know why, but it killed people. But imagine how many other, we take that stuff for granted. Every kid in high school these days learns about reactivity, learns about chemical combinations. Like, hey, we're gonna drop this little piece of lithium in water and watch it explode. That would have been magic. I mean, that's not even. If especially to some nowadays, we're so educated that when you watch something like that, you're like, oh, I don't know how it works, but I understand that there's science behind it, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You go back 1,000 years, and somebody took a rock, which is basically what lithium would have looked like, and you dropped it into a thing of water at a time they were still trying to make fire by clicking rocks together, and
So-
you made something explode. That would have been, like you said, that was power.
Let me give you
That's
a scenario.
crazy.
I want to throw a scenario at you real quick.
Please.
Say you got in a time machine and you traveled.
Oh yeah, you'd be a
Like-
wizard.
Well, hold on, man. Here are my mental exercise. You travel 200 years into the future, right? Mm-hmm. And people are still living pretty much like they are today. Like
The cars might drive themselves, but we're still in vehicles.
That's not what I've said.
Oh, okay.
People are living pretty much like they are today, right? However, if you go and check out like all the national monuments, they're half buried. And people can read, but they're not speaking English, and they can't read English.
Oh my God, they've all adopted the millennials and Z like new words for everything.
Well, this is kind of the situation when the Europeans got to Egypt.
Okay.
The pyramids were pretty much half buried. The Sphinx was barely visible.
Okay, that's a good point, 'cause you're right. Because when we discovered the Sphinx, all it was a head in the sand.
Nobody could read hieroglyphs. And so the thing is, like, if you travel to the future and you notice this, you think, like, what happened?
How did we forget? Hey, we've talked about this before when I said, like, I don't believe the moon landing is a real thing. I'm not saying that everyone's a lie. Just for propaganda purposes, we had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We had to say we did it so that we could end a very, very costly endeavor. But the part that I have a hard time believing is like when they say, like, oh yeah, we forgot how to do it. That's why we haven't gone back. We forgot the math.
We lost the technology.
We lost the technology.
Yeah.
But in all fairness, that is a good point. That's only 60 years. Is it plausible? Sure. I don't think they lost the technology as much as they lost the people that had the technical expertise to do it. But that is a very good point that you're bringing up, that in a span of only 200 years, going from one culture to the next, those two cultures could be 200 years difference in their cultures. So when you get there and they're like, hey, what is this? We're like, we have no idea how that got there. Yeah. When we showed up, this Sphinx thing was just sitting in the sand because, I mean, they wrote on papyrus paper that dissolved when it was exposed to light the wrong way. So even if they did document on this date, this dude built it and we built it for this reason, the paper itself is long since gone. So that's lost the technology.
They went and asked the locals, they're like, what is this? Who built this?
We have no idea.
We don't know who built this. What do these symbols mean? I don't know. Nobody knows.
So when they went to the mystery schools, the Egyptians at the time didn't know how to read hieroglyphs.
That's not necessarily what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying something. Okay.
I didn't mean to sidetrack you. This is really cool.
This is where I'm going. Let's pretend you had a worldwide civilization that predated ours. And it says, well, that's just crazy. It's not crazy. Look at Chernobyl. It's been abandoned for how long?
Right.
50 years now, and it's already pretty much overtaken. There's almost no evidence that we're in 100 years.
There's buildings, but there's like plants and animals that basically take
Give it 500 years.
Look at that show, The Last of Us. I love that when they're like walking through and the New York City is covered in vegetation, all the way up skyscrapers and stuff. I think that stuff's awesome because that's exactly what would happen.
But what if we had a pre-existing worldwide civilization, say Atlantis, the Atlantean civilization? And this is why you have all these pyramid structures all over the world.
Strongest shape in nature. Strongest shape we can build.
Egypt, South America. There's other monolithic structures that are simpler, but Göbekli Tepe, things like that. Right.
That's in I always get that wrong. It's in Mexico.
No, Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey.
Oh, that's okay. But I'm confusing that with the Aztec stuff.
But it's dated like right after the Younger Dryas.
Okay.
So this is what I'm just gonna throw this out. I'm gonna say this is what I think, but what I think. You had a worldwide civilization that built these monoliths, and something happened. You had a great catastrophe, and the shape, the face of the earth, like it's so dramatic. Like the face of the earth itself was forever changed, and you had survivors, and they had an understanding of how to build things, maybe not as well. Like if you and I were on an island and we had to build a house, we could probably build a log cabin. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be functional. We could build a structure.
Right.
And so you have like these structures that people had an idea what they were doing. They're aligned astronomically and all these things.
Which is crazy.
But
that they were that close.
And so that's what I think happened. And that's why when the Europeans went to Egypt, they're like, wow, we don't know who built this. We can't read these hieroglyphs because this was a language.
Not that the Egyptians couldn't read it, that the Europeans couldn't.
The Egyptians could not.
Oh,
that's what I'm saying. We could not read it until we found the Rosetta Stone, which is like
right, and that's also relatively recent.
Yeah, it was like 1940 or something.
Yeah, I'm like,
But the
was
thing
that
is,
80 years?
but it did have languages that we did know the equivalent for some things, or at least it was an effort at it.
For those that don't know, the Rosetta Stone was an actual stone tablet, and it had 3 or is it 4? 3 languages?
Yeah,
4
I think it was 3.
Three
It was like
languages.
Greek and Latin or Roman or something like.
It was one that we knew, one we had a little basic understanding of, and then the third was Egyptian hieroglyphs. And it wasn't anything like,
It would
it's
be
not
like
that it had anything profoundly written on the document. It was that if I wrote a secret code on one page and I wrote what the code said in English on the other page, if you spoke English, you could break the code. That's all it was.
well,
It was
it's like
just
if you're trying to learn
stone.
another language, you're going to show the equivalent.
Ex-
And it was something like that. But the
exactly.
thing is,
It was like what's a little pocket guide. If you go to another country, it has English on one side and it has German on the other, and you could look over here and be like, good morning, and then you looked over here, oh, guten Morgen. Oh, okay, now I see it. It had the language we spoke and a dead language that no one spoke, and then they could go inside and be like, okay, well, if that little turkey thing means this, then oh, hey, there's a turkey on the wall. That's what it's talking about, and that's how we started to decipher.
Yeah. But it didn't have
some of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it didn't have every symbol and
Right,
every
'cause we had to-
equivalent.
we
so
had to kind of confer
We
or
had to
infer.
deduce a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some gray area there with that. But
Like we
that's
talked about
kinda-
with the Anunnaki stuff, that some people classically trained interpreted it one way, and somebody who just, hey, I'm going to read the Rosetta Stone on my own, whatever, and kind of, this is how I interpret it. It's a little bit different.
So if we're talking about ancient civilizations, this is actually kind of, I wouldn't say groundbreaking. A lot of people might say like, well, that's duh, we knew about that. If you watch like an old Western, like you like black and white movies.
I do.
The Native Americans were portrayed as like they live in like huts. They're very primitive. There's
They
really
were nomadic, but they really
Well-
weren't that primitive.
the more and more evidence we're understanding now, because not necessarily here in Texas, but kind of Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, East Coast, we're finding more and more of these mounds, this mound builder civilization. And well, as we're uncovering these, we're realizing, hey, these were actually the center of like large settlements. The Native Americans, I'm sure there were probably some tribes that did the nomadic thing, but the majority of the Native Americans lived in large,
What we would say is civilizations.
large cities that rivaled what they had in Europe.
Wow.
Like we know in Mexico that was already the case.
Absolutely.
But we
Along
didn't
the
realize this
Amazon and
because
stuff.
they weren't building they were building mounds, not necessarily megaliths, but they were building these large mounds with these fortified cities. They used to believe there was like a couple 100,000 people that lived.
Which is massive for that time period.
It's millions. It was
Yeah.
millions of people, Native Americans
wow.
that lived in North America. When the first Europeans arrived, they described approaching the coast like there was smokes everywhere, campfires everywhere. Not campfires, but like people.
Signs of
people were
civilization.
everywhere. Yeah, signs of civilization everywhere. And they would describe like the forest were like parks because they would control burn and keep it all cleaned out, which we don't even do now. Like you go to a state park and it's overgrown. Like, well, we got to preserve nature.
Right.
No, if you don't preserve nature, what
burn
nature
it out.
does,
Strikes
every
lightning,
year or
burns
two,
everything down.
it cleans out all the other.
That's why,
crap.
like, people in California, they're always like, "Oh my gosh, we have to, save the forest and everything else." And I'm like, and they're like, "Oh, this year we had this terrible fire." And I'm like, that's because you have a terrible fire when you don't do it naturally every year. I say naturally, accidentally, campfires and everything else. When you wait 20, 30 years, you're going to have, this is the worst fire in 30 years. That's why.
But not only that, but there's evidence of really complicated trade routes, like the mine. What's the most recent? Either the Mayans or the Aztecs. There's evidence that they traded with some tribes here in
Wasn't
North
there
America.
the guy that like went down the Amazon? I always get the story wrong, but he went down the Amazon on a boat, right? And wrote all these stories like, we saw cities, thousands of people. They had boats, they had trade routes, they had commerce, they had all of these things. Then he came back, and it was a long time, a couple 100 years before anybody went back. And then when they went back, it was nothing.
Yeah. Because what happened
It was
when-
completely gone because when he went through, he probably gave them all a disease.
That's exactly what it was. When
And
the
it
first Europeans arrived,
wiped out their civilization. But like you said, in a couple hundred years, it was gone, retaken. Now they do the what's the satellite LiDAR thing, and like we look at the rainforest and we're like, oh yeah, it's rainforest. But when they do LiDAR and they look, they're like, well, that's really weird. And they're like, why? Like, well, that looks like a structure. There's like buildings, there's cities,
that
there's
whole
like
area was inhabited.
yeah, and I mean,
We're not talking about small settlements, like
right. No, we're talking civilizations.
Intricate
and
civilization.
It's a tragic thought. I mean, it's not like we talked about the smallpox blankets earlier. Okay. This guy that went on this expedition, they didn't know.
Yeah.
They had no idea. It's not like they intentionally tried to wipe these people out. It happened by accident. But then when people went back, there was no sign of anything.
Yeah. You had entire like cities. Cities is what they were. Hundreds of thousands of people, possibly. 99.9% of them were wiped out dramatically by disease that was brought by Europe, inadvertently, not intentionally.
Right.
And so, yeah, the first Europeans like, man, there's signs of civilization everywhere. When they come back, not even that long,
Yeah.
they come back and it's like, where is everybody? And yeah, you leave they didn't use like metal frame buildings and things like that. These were all constructed of wood. There was some rocks. I'm not saying it was all primitive, but even if you look at like the Mayan structures, you can't even tell. There's evidence now that there's probably like pyramids in Bosnia and things like that. But
I actually heard a thing that was talking about that is it the Aztecs, like that word is not actually accurate.
what pyramid?
No, Aztec.
Yeah,
That they were
you're
actually they were actually
was-
called Mex. It's very close to Mexico.
Yeah.
It's like Mexica. I
I
think
think I might have sent that to you.
maybe you did.
It was some-
it was
Some professors at like Harvard.
the
or
scientific
something.
community. I want to say it's Mexica. If I'm wrong,
I think it was.
Look it
It's
up.
like
but
Mexico.
Messica. That's what it was. It wasn't Mexica. It was Messica. And so when they would be talking about it, people kept accidentally. Well, I say people who would read about it were misassociating Mexico with Messica. And it got to be such a problem. Like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. And it got really confusing. So they took like two words and compiled it together. And so the Aztec people, they didn't call themselves Aztec. That's not a thing. Nowhere was it known as that. It is a conjuring, just to simplify.
I
when
really
we
can't
talk
help
about
but wonder if that is a classic example of racism, because they didn't want to talk about ancient Mexico and make it sound like a civilization older than ours that has more of a rich history than ours.
I mean, it's
They-
possible.
like that's a separate. It's not. They're not Mexicans. It's a separate civilization.
Well, I
even
mean,
though it's the same people, basically.
I can tell you that some of it is. I'm sure some of that is probably true because, like, when I was in Europe, I remember I lived in France, southern France, right on the Mediterranean coast, and you're very close to multiple countries. Monte Carlo's right there, Italy's right there, Spain is right there. People in America really forget how small Europe actually is, right? Hence why when World War II happened, it was everywhere. It affected everybody because it's not that big of an area. It'd be like if World War II broke out and it really only was in like Texas, Florida, Louisiana area. Like that's those three spots. That's pretty much Europe landmass wise. And today we wouldn't go like, oh, the entire United States is at war. It's this little corner of it, right? But when I was there, I made a point. Somebody said something in another language or whatever, and I'm like, oh, is that Spanish? And they were like, yes. And I said, oh yeah, I know a little Spanish because I live in Texas. I'm right there by Mexico. We learn a lot of Spanish. Exactly. Like, and oh man, they get really.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say they were offended by it, but like they stand up and like, this is Spain, and like that's why no one in Europe refers to Spain as Spain. It's España. They put the ES in it. It's España. Because when they speak it, he's like, we are España. We speak Spanish. And I was like, isn't Spanish what they speak in Mexico? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, what do they speak? And I forget. Like, it's kind of like Mexico versus Texas, right? Like when I say like, oh, I'm from Texas, I speak Spanish. They're like, no, you don't. You speak Tejas.
Well, it'd be like going to like the UK and be like,
They
yeah,
don't
I
speak
teach
English. Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
they're like, okay, yeah, you speak English.
They speak
okay.
English, but it's not English. It's there's a reason why they call it the King's English. Like it's different. Yeah, that's a good point. Even in America, I mean, someone in Minnesota speaks English. I'm from Texas. I speak English. You put the two of us side by side. It's different. You look at Boston, just that it has that little like Cockney flair to it or whatever, the cultural side of it. But yeah, I you're right. That's a good way of looking at it. But I think maybe it is like the original form of like, oh, we're tired of admitting this. We'd rather just say that this super awesome civilization, it died out because they're not as cool as us. Not oh, it just changed. It's like when I talk about the Roman Empire and I say like, oh, it never went away. I don't think it did. I don't think the Roman Empire is gone. I think it consolidated. I think it became what we would know now as the Vatican City and Catholic Church. That's the descendants of the ancient Roman order.
Well, what's the saying? There's nothing
New under the
holy
sun.
or Roman or imperial about the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah. No, it's, I mean, yeah, because it's the Holy Roman Imperial Empire. Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Holy Roman Empire.
Is it just the Holy Roman Empire?
Imperial Empire is kind of a...
Star Wars.
No, it's kind of doubling. It's the same thing. What kind of empire is not imperial?
The British Empire?
Imperial is the act of being an empire.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, just spelled differently.
I always thought that imperial was like maybe I'm just sounding dumb, but I always thought that imperial versus empire was like I don't know, like another form of government. Like, oh, this is a democratic versus a dictatorship. I'm just throwing out two terms, like similar in respects that, okay, well, there's still somebody in charge. Like, okay, in America, we have a president. It's a democracy, but we still have a ruler in essence that's up here, and a dictatorship is a ruler that's up here above everybody. But it's a different form of government. Are you looking it up?
I'm trying to. I don't have any signal today. Like my signal.
Dude, you need to just get my Wi-Fi.
Probably.
Because that way when you're here, like, I didn't know that was a problem. Poor guy. He's every time he comes over, he's like, yeah, I don't have any signal on my phone. I'm like, but
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Huh. Well, I think that I mean we delved around like the mystery school stuff,
but what Tyler, this is kind of, and I'm not casting. He was being very good at being skeptical, and so if you didn't watch the last episode with Tyler, go watch that. It's only 3 hours, no big deal. But he was like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's just a stack. You don't understand. Like, if you say that,
oh, you're talking about like,
you don't understand. Like,
oh,
like
we pretty much know how they built them. I'm like, no, we really don't. We think we do.
The pyramids
Yeah.
are built directly aligned with north and south. Perfectly aligned.
And they line up perfectly with the other pyramids on the circumference of the earth.
They all line up. Well, there's definitely a pattern there.
Yeah.
The three great pyramids all correspond, or let me put it this way, they all correspond with the three stars in Orion's belt. If you take Orion's belt and three great pyramids and superimpose them,
right,
they're perfect.
And when we say perfect, we're talking like with modern day micrometer level accuracy.
You cannot put a piece of paper. You can now, because like the bricks have, like the external bricks have been so old they kind of wore out. But if you go like inside the pyramid where it's still pretty much untouched, you cannot even slip a piece of paper between these stones.
And for them to fit like that, it has to be that perfectly done, because a gap would cause the stone to fail, because the weight couldn't be distributed to the stone next to it. It would cause the stone to crack. So the fact that it has to be put just like that, with that level of accuracy, to keep the structure from collapsing in on itself. And when you go into those pyramids, which there's not a lot of stuff. I mean, people think that we know a lot about the pyramids.
We don't know.
We really don't.
You know what pyramid? Do you know what pyramid means?
No. Please. I didn't know what chem came from. Like,
Pyramid,
I love origins of
pyramid
words.
is Latin.
Okay.
Fire in the middle.
Okay. Why? Why would we call the pyramid fire in the middle?
Why would you call a pyramid fire in the middle?
I don't know. I know there's like theories of like, oh, the pyramids were used for generating energy, and he's shaking his head. He's like, oh, you stumbled on it.
If you look at the concept art of Nikola Tesla in his free energy plants that he designed,
right?
And you look at the pyramids, there's correspondences.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, the pyramids weren't just as
naked. This is what it's getting at. We don't know much about it.
Stones. These things were covered in marble. These are all highly electroconductive stones.
Right.
They had gold caps on the top.
Why was it fire in the middle? It was visible from miles.
Yes.
Away.
Yes. There's also this is again going back to where local lore is usually telling you something.
Well, like
hold on, because this is what I'll tell you. There was ancient legends that there was a labyrinth underneath. No. There was an Egyptian. Okay, back up. There was a hall of records, an Atlantean hall of records underneath the Sphinx. And for decades, the Egyptian, I don't remember the name, but basically they have this whole organization in their government that just kind of keeps you from. You have this whole, I can't remember. It's like the antiquities, but anyway, there's this group in Egypt, and you have like the accepted history of Egypt, and anything that goes against
the doctrine
goes against that. Any research you want to do that might prove this otherwise,
because you can't really go explore that.
You don't understand. Like a lot of people don't understand. Like Egypt's not like a democratic country like the United States where you can just go wherever and get the permit. Like if the government says no, you're not going to do that. You don't have to. They don't have to justify why. They're just like, no, you can't go study that. But recently,
it's kind of like we were talking about with the Vatican.
Yeah,
but you can't just go look at their books.
They've recently done sonar studies. I don't know how they got the permission to do this around the Sphinx.
Ooh.
And they're like, hey, there are structures underneath the sand here. Oddly enough, there are evidence of rooms and hallways and like a whole complex. Of course not. Of course not.
They have, but no one's talked about it, or they've been sealed for 2,000 years. No one's ever been in there. That's what I mean. Like,
if someone's been in there, no one's talked about it,
or no one's alive to talk about it. I mean, like in Indiana Jones, right? Where they joke about like the Nazis went there and they were like looking for all this stuff. Like, people don't realize this. Hitler was actually there. I mean, like that. So, there's a reason why when you're trying to conquer Europe, you went to Africa. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you really study like World War II history, there's no strategic value to Africa at that time. Nowadays, we have like oil fields and all this other stuff. That wasn't really there. Kuwait and all of the like rich resources and stuff. He was really into searching for a lot of whatever you want to call
artifacts and stuff. Yeah,
artifacts of ancient history and civilization. The Nazis were there looking for some of this stuff because all it takes is one little fragmented piece of it might be there, because they were looking for maybe an ancient disease, ancient weapons, ancient technology, whatever. Mm-hmm. In modern day Iraq, they found outside of Baghdad, they found the jars, the Baghdad battery.
Yeah,
and like there's no reason to have that. Like if you go into a cave and you find, if you don't know what I'm talking about, they found these clay jars, and inside the jars were these rudimentary metal sheets, which of course they had metal back then. They had swords and all kinds of stuff, but these rudimentary sheets of metal that were inside of these clay jars, and they had electrolyte water, mm-hmm. Using things like vinegars, acids.
Well, there are hieroglyphs,
citrus and stuff, and they generated voltage.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay, that's cool that was there, but there's no other, quote unquote, there's no other sign of, okay, so we have something that generates electricity. First of all, where did they get that from? Mm-hmm. Why would they invent that? Why would they make it? And then what was that used for? Like you said, with the pyramids, there's a lot of theories like that it was used to generate power. The question would be, for what?
Well, the thing is, if people went inside the pyramids and built the pyramids and then later built the hieroglyphs, why is there no evidence of any soot inside any of the halls or anything. But there are hieroglyphs of people carrying these things that look like giant light bulbs. So why is that? Here's the thing. And
You're gonna have to find some pictures of that.
Well, if I can pull it
no,
up.
I was gonna say like and put that
Yeah.
in because I know what you're talking about, but you are right. I didn't think about that.
But let me-
they're not carrying torches in hieroglyphs.
No.
The picture when we think of like the Mummy, right? The movie The Mummy, when they're like going through looking at ancient Egyptian civilization, the British dudes are carrying torches. The modern day explorers are carrying torches. You're right. In the hieroglyphs, they're carrying things that look an awful lot like lanterns, and they're literally carrying them, and they hang like from under their hands. And people are like, oh, well, it's a
well, that's
lantern.
different.
Well, they're like, oh yeah, yeah,
That's different.
But it's like
You're
a
talking about
lantern.
the
That,
basket things, the purse things. I'm talking about like
Right.
giant light bulbs looking things. The whole
really?
purse things. The whole purse thing is another interesting thing, but I don't want to get that yet because I wanted to tell you. So, like I said, when the Europeans got to Egypt, like we don't know who built these things. Once we could start decoding the hieroglyphs, we're like, okay, this pharaoh built this pyramid, yada yada. Like we could figure out the pyramids.
Well, we
Yeah,
can
but-
figure out when
hold
they
on.
were created,
Hold
not
on.
necessarily why.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right.
But what's interesting is as far as the Sphinx goes, the earliest records we can find about the Sphinx is that restoration projects were being done on it.
Because the pyramids were built long after the Sphinx.
The Sphinx is, and if you look at like a side view of the Sphinx,
yeah.
it has,
Yeah, I know.
you can see where it's been restored, but it has like lion appendages, a lion body, and a tiny human face. And it's believed that at one point, maybe a pharaoh came and made that into a
Chiseled the face that was there off to make it look like
it
him.
used to be a lion, and it faced the constellation Leo when the sun. So the sun rose in the constellation Leo,
During the time that it was built.
but that was like 30,000 years ago, something like that.
I had heard that, and the reason it was people are like, well, why would they do that? Because obviously people would still see that it was a lion. Again, at the time that was probably done, the Sphinx was probably buried up to just a head. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this pharaoh is not going to come along and be like, let's dig up this whole thing. First of all, they didn't even probably know what was under the sand. All you see is this, let's call it a dog. I mean, it's called the Sphinx because of the Ra's guards. The Sphinx guards were the Egyptian dog-faced warriors. The
Cynocephaly.
yeah, right. No, I can't think of what the other name and
They
it's
were hyenas
somebody
or
in the
something.
yeah the jackals.
Jackals, that's what it was.
But the Egyptian word sounds very similar to Sphinx, right? Like that's the thing. They're not called Sphinx guards, anyways. But of course, he's going to come on. It'd be like if thousands of years from now somebody found Mount Rushmore, right? But let's say you only had the head just sticking out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to be like, okay, well, I'm tired of looking at this lion, and nobody understands who made it or why it's there. So get up there and chisel it to make it look like me.
Mm-hmm.
And now modern day, we've come through and exposed more of the structure. And now it looks weird because it's like, why is this lion paw looking thing with a human face? They didn't, like you said, they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't there. And it makes sense. Like if they didn't know that the paws were there, they wouldn't know that there's something under it. They wouldn't know where that goes. They wouldn't even know anything about
This
it.
is all like some Graham Hancock stuff. I've never listened to him or watched
Never
him,
heard of
but
him.
I'll send you some stuff one day. But also what's interesting is now that the Sphinx has been uncovered,
Yeah.
there's lots of evidence of water erosion.
Right.
And at the base of the Sphinx.
Because the Nile used to be a very flourished area.
It used to be it used to be a very wet,
Right.
almost, I won't say
Because
tropical area.
there's signs of like ancient shipwrecks and all kinds of things.
But this was like-
large vessels.
But for it to have the water erosion, it would also have had to been already existing in the timeline I'm talking about.
Right.
That's when Egypt was wet.
And when that happened, we know through science would be thousands of years prior to the Egyptian, or what we would call the Egyptian
It pushes
civilization.
the timeline really far back, which is
Of
why
humanity.
That's humanity, which
Yeah.
is why it's like no.
That's why I say
not
like
a thing.
10,000 years, but like it depends on where you want to draw that line, because depending on the data you look at, I've
This
heard
is-
we
this is-
could be as old as 50,000 years old.
Probably older. But this is where we're talking about. I mentioned previously, like call it like there are certain fields that are very dogmatic, and history is the biggest one. I would say
History is
history is the
written
most
by the
dogmatic,
victor.
and anything that causes them to want to rewrite or reevaluate anything, no sir. No,
Well, look how hard we fought as a civilization against modern medicine. And when I say modern, people don't realize that what we classify as modern medicine is less than 100 years old. And most of what today we do would have been considered fringe quack science. And I'm not talking about x-rays and CT scans. Just something as simple as microbiology would have been heresy 100 years ago. And now it's, oh, well, that's accepted. Like, this is how bloodborne pathogens and everything else. Less than 100 years ago, in some parts of the world, we were still bloodletting people as a way of, oh, well, the infection, they didn't know that. The sickness is in their blood. Oh, we'll just drain it out and then they'll be good. Apply that to thousands of years. And you're looking at, and then like you said, if there's stuff you either lost to time that we don't understand, we didn't understand when we found it, or that now looking back flies so contradictory to modern thinking that it would cause literal civil unrest at this point.
You remember Indiana Jones and Holy Grail at the very end where they're pushing that?
I didn't actually get. Oh, Holy Grail. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
He's in the warehouse putting the Holy Grail in like this giant warehouse.
Yeah.
There are a lot of stories, early United States.
The origin story of Warehouse 13. That's what I always think about.
Oh, yeah. But early United States, like when we're starting to kind of really colonize the United States and build things, there are many, many newspaper articles where some farmer was getting ready to build a house or excavating some land or something, and they would come across graves of giant people,
Right.
like 10-foot people, sometimes bigger than that. And without fail, the Smithsonian Institute would come,
Box it up and take
box it up, and you would never hear about it again.
I've heard of that. I mean, I've never seen it, but
And we
there's
hinted
also
at this
pictures
before.
that float around on the internet of that kind of stuff.
We can, well, with AI, I mean, who knows what's real?
exactly.
But there's also stories of explorers, and you talked about this briefly. They were exploring the Grand Canyon,
Right.
found a little hole in the cliff, and it's like a huge labyrinth. And like, what is all this Egyptian looking stuff doing here? You can't even set foot in that part of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, and here's the fun part about that. People, there's a lot of things. We talk about like Sasquatch and everything else. Great, cool. If you want to say that we're a bunch of tin hat wearing idiots, that's fine.
That's fine. Like and subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like and subscribe. But what I mean is, okay, no one debates that Area 51 exists. Okay, the debate is whether or not there's aliens or blah 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 blah. Whatever. Okay, there's just two guys talking at a garage. But Area 51 is there. Are you allowed to go? No, it is a no-fly zone. You can't even get within so many feet of the gate. All kinds of stuff. I would argue everybody knows that. Everybody knows Area 51 exists. Everybody knows you can't go there. Whatever happens there is another story. I don't think anybody knows that there is a military. This is not up for debate. You can Google it. You can go on Google Earth. There is a military installation to this day in the Grand Canyon that is a no-fly zone, that is militarily occupied, that has no significance. Like, for a while, the story was, oh, it's a fallout shelter. Mm-hmm. But then, after the Cold War, when they declassified all the fallout shelters, they were like, oh, yeah, we got one under Cheyenne Mountain. We've got one over here. We've got one buried in this mountain, and blah, 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 blah. They made these into mountains. When they came out and said, again, they're all declassified now. Not all. I'm sure there's still a secret
Well, the
base
location
somewhere.
still, it's a knowledge, but
like we know, like the government came out and said, yeah, we have all these fallout shelters. We built all the places. There's one outside of Virginia. There's one here. There's one blah 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 blah. They didn't say like, oh, and the one in the Grand Canyon, which everybody said like, oh, it's probably a fallout shelter. They didn't say that. Mm-hmm. There is no official record of it. but you can go on Google Earth and see it. I think that's kind of interesting. It goes back to the thing about like Antarctica. I'm not saying that there's a government secret base where they're keeping aliens alive in Area 51 or in the Grand Canyon or anything else. There is a reason. I don't know what it is. There is a reason why you cannot go to Antarctica. There is a reason why every country in the world can't agree on shit, but they all agree we're not going to go to Antarctica.
What's going on there? Yes, because you don't want to mess with the bees. That's where the bees are.
Yeah, and they apparently also have this scientifically, culturally relevant whatever in the Grand Canyon that can't go there.
Yeah, I agree.
That's stuff.
I want to tell you something.
That's crazy because we know it. We don't know why, but we know it.
So you brought up Area 51. In the 90s, there used to be this dude that would come on some of the shows, like Unsolved Mysteries, and
The guy that said he worked there and everything.
Bob Lazar.
Yeah,
right?
Bob Lazar.
And he kind of disappeared for a while. Then he came on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
But
That
he was saying back in the 90s, before the government's like, okay, yeah, there's something out there. You just still can't go. But
I mean, we know it's there. It's on
Bob
Google
Lazar,
Earth. It's a
Bob Lazar
facility.
is like, yeah, outside of Las Vegas, they fly you. Well, they take a plane from Las Vegas and they fly you into
No tail number plane.
yeah
That's a big deal.
They-
If you're
they fly
around
you
people who
into
fly
this-
planes, that's a big deal.
to this place, and it's called Area 51. And he described all this in the 90s. It's like when you arrive, you look around. It's just like a bare base. There's not much to it, but underground,
Yeah, there's
that's
an
where all the research
elevator
is.
goes down, yeah.
And he got in trouble because he used to take people, his friends. There was a ridge you used to be able to go to that was close by.
Right.
They pushed back the line so you can't go there.
Right.
But they
Well,
have to,
because at the time you could barely see it with quote unquote modern optics. Nowadays, my cell phone's got 100x zoom on my Samsung. Like,
well, they could just go and park on the ridge, and you could see UFOs.
Yeah.
And experimental aircraft.
right. Which
Notice the
honestly
difference.
is what I really think Area 51 is.
Notice what I say the difference. I'm not saying, because people will be like, well, those were just experimental aircraft. There were some, I'm sure.
Sure.
But at night, you could go and you would see legitimate UFOs.
Right.
And so the fact that,
You say legitimate as in like saucers.
I don't know if the saucers are legitimate. That's kind of the,
Well,
But-
okay. A UFO. Okay. My daughter went on a flight today. She is a pilot. My wife trained as a pilot. I have my ex-father-in-law was a retired pilot. I grew up around a lot of pilots. A UFO is simply defined as something that's flying that we don't know. At some point, the B-2 stealth bomber that we all know exists was a UFO.
Okay.
The
Well, let me
SR-71 was a UFO because somebody saw something on radar traveling 7,400 miles an hour and said, nothing flies that fast. And now looking back, we're like, that's the LA speed story of the SR-71, which is awesome. And I
well,
love
I'll
that
be
story.
more specific.
It's an unexplained flying object. Is what I like to
you
say.
could go out there and you could see lights that were traveling at speeds and doing maneuvers
that are
that
unexplainable with modern understanding of avionics.
just not only that, modern physics, like 90-degree
Okay,
turns.
see, that's different. Yeah.
Going 90-degree turns at 1,000 miles an hour. A human in a craft as we understood would not survive something like that, right? The G-force would, you're dead.
Right.
But if you can create something that has like a reality bubble, which is like what Bob Lazar described, a reality bubble that is not affected externally.
By the laws of physics.
Well, it has a lot of physics, but they're
Like,
just
what's in it isn't affected by the laws of physics. If you're going that fast and do a 90-degree turn, you would be obliterated
well,
by the
everything
laws
has
of
to,
physics.
Yeah, as we understand them now.
Right.
But if you're like this reality bubble, you can do whatever, and it's not gonna, it doesn't affect you internally in there. And so my whole point I'm going with this is the fact that we now know, like, hey, this is there, and it's pretty much been acknowledged, like, hey, there's this base there, but it's just the base. But we know that people used to go there and see this UFO activity at the base.
Right.
And what people don't know is that it's not necessarily Area 51, but there's another smaller base,
Groom Lake.
Groom Lake, which is probably where the weirder stuff happens.
Right. The Groom Lake facility.
Which was farther out, so you can't just go and sit and look there, right? But yeah, man, the fact that it's acknowledged and all this UFO activity tells me two things. Either we did capture aliens at one point, like Roswell, and we reverse
engineered
their
technology, whatever.
technology, or we have made connections with like this Federation of Planets that people keep talking about, and there's like a technology exchange going on or something like that.
Hey, we're
But
going to slowly allow you guys to have this over time so you don't like.
what's the
blow
saying?
yourselves up.
What's the saying? By the time you learn about it, the military's already had it for 50 years. That kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, well, if you look at the standard infantrymen today, and you look, I'm not saying standard. Okay, you look at like a special operator today. The level of technology, they have thermal vision, night vision, all of this stuff, and you're going like, wow, that's really cool. After the Bin Laden raid, they were talking about like why were they blowing up the remnants of this helicopter? How many? We had Mogadishu. We had like a helicopter like crash land. Nobody cared about blowing up the evidence. So like, well, it's probably because that helicopter's not declassified yet. Like it's a stealth helicopter, and that started a whole debate and stuff. There is, of course, things out there. The SR-71 that we all know now, completely top secret for a long time. Groom Lake is the home of Skunk Works, which if you go Google that, it's really cool. The little if you've seen the new Top Gun, the little skunk that's on the tailplane.
Skunk Works was like Bell Laboratories, I think.
Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin, which defense contractor.
But yeah,
of course, you have to have somebody.
Balthazar worked at Lockheed before he went to. Yeah. So I mean, it's closely related.
It's it's not fringe. It's legitimately like we know. I mean, at some point, you had to create a plane that could fly itself. Nowadays, we go, well, of course, there's drones and all this other stuff. I look at something as simple as I just bought a drone. I bought myself a little, I mean, it's not even that big. It's literally like this big. And I take it up, fly it around my house. The other day, the little shingle factory over here caught fire. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that looks like. Walked outside on my lunch break, put my drone up, and I could take pictures of it from here.
Oh, that's cool.
10 years ago, I'm not even talking 100 years ago. 10 years ago, a piece of technology like that would have been unachievable for me. It's a toy. It's a toy now. You go back 50, 60, 70 years, 80 years ago in World War II. Can you imagine a drone? They were using. I had this great video the other day I watched talking about how they had nuclear mines during the Berlin crisis.
Oh my God.
That were powered by chickens. Okay, and we're talking post World War II.
This is like Fallout stuff.
This exactly
nuclear mines.
This is post World War II. This is the Cold War. Berlin, they were like, hey, we're going to have these nuclear bombs that are over shafts in the ground because we think the Russians might try something. And now this all got canned. You can Google search this. There is one surviving nuclear mine that's in a museum that there's a plaque. It was powered by chickens. Okay. The British came up with this idea that they're like, hey, the Russians are probably going to storm us. So we're going to have this mine and we're going to have this timer and we're going to drop the mine down in the hole and then fall back. The Russians take our position and then boom, mines go off later, take care of the Russians. But then they did all this study and they said, oh, when the mine goes down, it gets wet. And if it gets wet, the timer doesn't work. So we need something that would be warm to keep the timer warm. They're like, oh, chickens sit on eggs. What if we just made the timer look like an egg and put a chicken in the bomb, and then the chicken would have food and water, and then after 7 days, the chicken would starve to death or die of dehydration, and then slowly the timer would get cold, and then the timer would go off, and then boom, we'd kill the Russians. And I'm thinking in my head, okay.
That is the most convoluted.
Oh, yeah. No, but okay, I know it sounds weird, but bear with me here. That's like the Cold War was. I always get the date wrong. 50, 60, 70, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, right?
It ended like the 80s, mid 80s.
Okay, so not even 40 years ago, right? 40 to 50 years ago. The epitome of nuclear timed bomb detonation was a chicken sitting on an egg timer, for the lack of a better term. That's now recently declassified information. And like I said, the surviving bomb is in a museum. You can go see it. They built two. They tested one. They have a spare. That's not even getting into the actual technology. I mean, when the British in World War II invented radar, the Germans couldn't figure out how are they shooting us down at night. I mean, can you imagine being the first guy that you're flying around in a plane? You're looking out the window. Everyone in England has turned off their lights. You're like, well, it should be here because we flew for so many seconds in this direction and we got a map. So we're probably over England. And all of a sudden you're taking rounds and you're like, where's that coming from? And some dude is shooting you. And the whole, you were talking about mascots. It's the origin story of Bugs Bunny. Did you know this?
No.
Okay, so the Germans are just getting shot at night. They have no idea. They're like, how are they seeing us? It's night. If I can't see you, how do you see me? The official story, because they have to start telling people, because Britain, these planes are falling out of the sky at night with German and everybody's like, how are we shooting down the planes at night? So the British government had to come up with a story. They couldn't say, oh, we invented this thing called radar by accident because we heard the Nazis were making a death ray. So we started building a death ray. Well, we never could make the death ray work. But what we found out is that if you turn up the fake death ray that doesn't work, we could see shit through fog. And we didn't know why, but we're like, hey, if we made this smaller and put it in a plane, anything metal that's out in the clouds or at night, you could see really easily, hey, there's a plane over there. And so they invented radar. The British came up with it first, put it in their planes, went up at night. They were just decimating the German Luftwaffe. So when they had to lie to the public, they told them it was because, and this is during food shortages, nobody had a lot of good things to eat. They told them it was because their pilots were eating carrots. To this day, do you think eating carrots makes your eyesight better? No. Wow. It is the origin story of that. Why do we have things like carrot smoothies, carrot shakes, carrot cake? All of these recipes came out of World War II. People were being told to ration everything. Bugs Bunny was created as a cartoon because kids needed to eat their carrots to make their eyesight better.
You mean a mascot made to make kids eat something that they wouldn't eat?
Except that one's actually good for you, right? But like, it's carrots, whatever. But to make a mascot to shoot down Nazis. Yes.
We talked about the government kind of hiding things. We talked about...
They would never do that.
We talked about cryptids. So I want to share you a story called The Giant of Kandahar. And you said you haven't heard this, so this is...
I have never heard of the Giant of Kandahar. I'm assuming it's in the Kandahar region of Afghanistan.
Correct.
Okay. I only know about that from, the last 24 fucking years of being at war.
This story originates from that war. Either Iraqi freedom or one of the...
No, Iraqi freedom was Iraq.
Just Iraq.
Yeah, so this would be like...
enduring freedom or something? I don't know.
Whatever it is.
We spent a lot of time over there, right? So
24 years. Yeah.
This happened during one of the wars in Afghanistan in like the last 20 years. And how the story goes is there was a squadron or platoon. I don't really know how like infantry and things like that are split up, but you have...
It's not a squadron. That's Air Force.
Okay, yeah. I guess a whole squadron would be like everybody. But it was like what was that, platoon? A troop?
Well, okay. Well,
it's not.
All of that is technically, I guess, accurate because, like, you could have. I mean, you could say it's a detachment. You could say it's a squad. You could say it's how many people there were.
Yeah.
Could there have been an entire division? Sure. I doubt there was 2,000 people out there walking around, but that would be a division.
Yeah, you're more familiar with that. All right. So
Yeah,
some troops were deployed.
Was it like a mission, like just some guys on a mission?
Well, I'm telling you.
Well, no, I meant
the
like
story.
that'll tell you the answer.
They were on a mission. Yes.
Okay, so if it's like 6 guys, it's like a squad.
Okay.
If there's like 12
Not
guys,
a squadron.
not a squadron, just a squad. And if it was like, it might be a couple squads. A platoon is, dude, it's been a long time since I've done this. Like, whatever it is, 4 makes up a platoon. 4 platoons make up a. What? It doesn't even matter. I don't even know. Okay, some dudes who were out there looking.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, a bunch of dudes in Afghanistan looking for poppy fields, probably.
No. So you had some soldiers, and this was leaked from like just a few of these people. They were sent to a region in Kandahar, and the reason they were sent there was there was some other troops that had just. Oh, that's crisp.
Sorry.
That's crisp.
I had to crack open a cold one here.
Your pickle beer.
My pickle beer.
But there were-
knock it. Don't knock it till you try it.
There were some other troops that had gone missing, just disappeared.
These are American forces.
American forces.
Okay.
And so there was another platoon or whatever. They were sent to this region where their last known location
Which is what we do.
to
Find out.
what happened. And so
The first team was probably recon, and the second is rescue.
something like that. And so they end up going up like this narrow almost like a goat trail up this mountain.
As 90% of Afghanistan is.
And after a certain point, they're like finding evidence that there had been maybe like some kind of a battle or something. And so they get to the top.
Like a battle or something? I don't know. Air Force? I don't know. It was just like stuff.
Yeah.
There was bullet casings.
Well, I don't recall the exact evidence, but there was evidence, bullet casings and things like that.
There was a battle.
There was a battle. There was a firefight. Yeah. You saw that before? I hope so. But they get to the top, and it opens up to like this cave.
Okay.
And so as they are kind of hanging out, trying to decide, do we want to go in this cave? We don't know what's in this. What's going on?
Calling a bomb, whatever. Yeah.
A giant spear. We're talking like someone took an entire tree trunk and shaped it into a spear, comes flying out of this cave and impales one of the soldiers. DRT, right? Dead right there.
Where's the story coming from? I'm just curious. Like, it's the Beast of Kandahar, but like
the giant,
Giant of Kandahar. But like, is this something like? Is there a book that was written about it? Is this like one of these guys went on a speaking tour about it, or?
So it was one of the soldiers, and I think maybe like another one. It was like a I don't think you call it a whistleblower, but it was one of the things. Like, it's kind of like with the UFO stories. Like I was. They told me never to tell anybody, but it's been years. So it's the same thing. And so anyway, this spear comes flying out, impales one of the soldiers. Excuse me. He passes away, like right there. And out behind this spear comes this like 15-foot giant, blue skin, red hair, 6 fingers on each hand, and double rows of teeth.
Okay. A troll.
Biblical description of a Nephilim.
I did not know Nephilim had blue skin.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
I believe so. I have to double check, but it's associated with the Nephilim. And they unload on this thing.
Well, as I would.
Unload. And they eventually put it down, and they call in. And like we were talking about with the other things.
Black
helicopter comes in, lands, takes the body. These guys are like debriefed, like you never saw anything.
You saw nothing. This was a routine training exercise. Yes. Do
if
with
you
the
say
spear,
anything, your career's over, your life's over, yada, 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 that kind of thing. But that was like 20 years ago, and these guys are like living with the PTSD and the trauma of it over time. I could see why they were like, I just got to tell somebody because this is messed up.
It also makes sense why we were there for 24 years.
Yeah.
That's all they had to do. Hey, guys.
There are conspiracy theories that the real reason we went after like Saddam Hussein is
he had evidence of something.
There was a Stargate in that region that we wanted to.
That's like my
I know
thing.
that's your thing,
bro. That is my thing. I legitimately. So you might not know this.
Did you know Stargates are like a real thing.
I was gonna say I don't want to derail this because I do want to hear about the Giant of Kandahar because.
That's it.
Oh, that was it. Like, oh well, there's probably not a lot of information.
But it had like 2 rows of teeth, red hair, blue skin, 6 digits on each hand,
wow,
and like his feet and everything.
Have you ever heard of Project Stargate?
Yeah, I watched the show.
Okay, no, see, okay, so here's the thing. There's actually a theory. Like, why does the military cooperate on any TV show or movie or anything else? Well, there's two reasons. One is recruitment, right? Why would the military pay for the fuel for all of the aircraft for Top Gun 2? Because they need people to join the Navy, and okay, we can spend a couple $100 million. Cool. Yeah, we can spend a couple $100 million over here on some ads to say "Go Navy," right? Or we could just let our pilots fly with cameras strapped to them. They got to fly anyway. We got to train them, and then we're going to let these guys film stuff, and we're going to have the dopest recruitment movie of all time. I never wanted to join the Navy, but I would have loved to have joined Top Gun, right? Like, of course, any movie like that, you know that like the 1% of the 1% are ever going to make it into that job. The rest of the guys are going to literally be like peeling potatoes, right? Yeah. But so that's one, recruitment. The second reason is plausible deniability. Okay, so let's say that there was a top secret program called Project Blow Up Uncle Sam, right? Inflatable Sam.
He is blown up. What are you talking about?
There's a Project Polystyrene Sam, whatever. Okay, Project Sam. If you didn't want people to learn anything about it back in the day, you just didn't talk about it, right? Why is Roswell? Honestly, I think they created that out of thin air. The problem with Roswell is something happened. Whether it was a classified piece of technology, we crashed a plane that we didn't want people to know about. There's actually some people saying like it might have been the precursor to the U-2 spy plane, and it crashed, and the government's going to, of course, they're going to show up and be like, no pictures, no pictures. What was that TikTok video a couple of weeks ago? The top secret surveillance submarine thing looked like a torpedo that washed up on the beach, and the dude's like filming it, and the guy with the laptop's like, please don't, I have to tell my boss if you do that. Like, nowadays, of course, everyone's going to whip out a phone and take a picture of it. Back then, they just set up roadblocks and said, you can't go through here, we're recovering a weather balloon. And of course, everybody's going to be like, a weather balloon? Really? It's probably aliens. Now, fast forward to today, and it's we don't want to just be quiet about it, because we have some examples like Roswell where obviously telling people that it's a weather balloon no longer going to work, and it just creates more problems. So now let's just go because the government the military, you and I were both the military, the government and military would never just use plausible deniability. If I say weather balloon, then people are going to be like, that doesn't look like a weather balloon. What was the weather balloon doing? What was the mission of the weather balloon? I want a freedom of information request the weather balloon, right? All these things. Or you go step 2. We're going to bury it in the search queue. Hear me out. Most people don't know that Walt Disney, when he died, had his head removed and frozen in a liquid nitrogen bath. Fact. It is a fact. Disney didn't like that people knew that. Not Disney as in Walt. Disney as in the company. Didn't like that people knew that. And we're Google searching Walt Disney frozen in ice. Right? So I can see, okay, I'm going to go to your face. I know you can see where this is going. So they said, hey, all we're going to do is we're going to make the next movie, which they're going to make anyway. Let's name the movie Frozen. So
But
now
you got to remember, before that, in the 90s, you had Disney on Ice.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But in the 90s, the internet was just starting, right? Nowadays, if you go right now and type in Walt Disney Frozen, I guarantee you are not going to be greeted by anything to do with a Wikipedia article, a story, a newspaper clipping. If you see it, it's going to be so far down, nobody would notice it. If you search for Walt Disney Frozen on Ice, which is a production, Walt Disney Head Frozen, I guarantee you'll be like, the head of Walt Disney talked about this today and blah, 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 right? It has been essentially buried. Where has it been buried? No. Did they take the information down? No. If you Googled Walt Disney's head frozen for science, blah, 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 of course you're eventually going to find it. But the majority of people aren't going to come across that information on their own. So when I think of things like military experiments or anything else, of course they're going to do the exact same thing. Project Stargate. Go look it up. It is an actual DARPA.
I forgot what even led us down this road.
Stargate. Yeah. You're like, how do we get here? Okay, so DARPA, the Defense Research. Hold on, I always get it wrong.
Defense Air Research Protection Organization, I think, or something like that.
Something like that. If you don't know what it is, and again, this is not fringe science.
Totally different than DERPA.
Yeah, DARPA is what the Navy gets. DARPA is it's like it is the future of everything you don't even know exists yet. Like if I'm not going to say if as in we don't, because we probably do. If cloaking technology existed, DARPA, yeah, I agree, it exists. But if cloaking exists, DARPA's the one who creates it. It is the geeks. It is the nerds. It is the people who watch science fiction and say, let's make that. And then figure out the science to do it.
Just remind me of a whole other thing I need to talk to you about one day.
Everything. If the next generation of anything is a DARPA research project, well, there was one called Project Stargate, and it's very successful, and it still exists. And if you Google search United States Military Project Stargate, it will pop up. The problem was is a lot of people were talking about this thing, and they didn't want people talking about this thing. It has to do with things like environmental control, like controlling the weather, controlling earthquakes, natural disasters. Of course, there's no correlation with about the time that this project originally started and the sudden increase and rise in things like, earthquakes, natural disasters, and weather phenomenon. But regardless, this research project, they were tired of people looking into it. If you go on Google and you search for even Project Stargate, which is the legitimate name of it, it's going to pull up with Stargate ads for the TV series, which I love, or the movie. The United States Air Force actually partnered with Paramount as a technical advisor and helped with the Stargate movie. Now, of course, you're going to say technical advisor, but they're like, hey, you should do this, or you should do this, and blah, blah. They worked with the author. Right? The name. And when you call in, they're like, oh, I'm writing this book. And they're like, oh, what's it about? Oh, that's so cool. We're going to help you. We're going to give you some technical advice.
The best way to hide the truth is put it right in front of people.
100%.
There is, well, we got some dogs don't fit out there.
I think my wife has returned outside because I can hear the dogs barking.
And many, going back to Native Americans, many of their ruins, they have these strange doorway shaped. I don't know if you've ever seen these before. They're shaped like doorways, but they don't.
I didn't know the Indians had ruins until you told me about their like civilizations and stuff. So I would have thought teepee if you said Indian structure.
No. But carved into like cliff walls or into larger like megalithic structures, you have these doorways. They're carved into it, but they don't go anywhere.
Okay.
And when they ask like the shamans or the elders, well, what is this?
It's a Stargate.
It's a Stargate.
Yeah.
That's where our Star Brothers would come, where they used to come from to visit us. Not anymore, but used to.
Right.
And when I was talking about in the last episode, like Bigfoot, like understanding it as like a spiritual creature or not, that's kind of where I was going with, is like disappearing in the middle of the field. Well, because they're not from this reality or this location as we know it. They have either biologically or some way, they have a way of moving between these things.
Right.
And so it's the same thing. Like, if people are like, oh, that's really far fetched. The rule, there's kind of a big movement right now. I say big, but it's a growing movement in like these ufology, like the believers of aliens and things like that. Mm-hmm. That aliens aren't necessarily from another planet. They're here, and they've been here probably longer than we have. But originally, they're from Earth, just not our Earth. Right. Another Earth, a parallel Earth.
Oh yeah,
maybe in the future.
Sliders.
Yeah,
I love that TV
That was a great show.
Man.
I love Gimli.
I miss old school science fiction because, like, I say old school, 90s science fiction. Yeah, sorry. I miss that science fiction because it's not trying to make a point. It's not trying to say like, let's go into the future to see how people have messed up the Earth's environment and everything. It's just like great
It's
TV.
so memorable. I remember like the first episode, and he like goes through it, and everything looks normal. And he's sitting at the red light. They're honking behind him, like, "Go! What are you talking about?" It's like everything's flipped. And there was another episode.
Not everything. It's just that. The stop sign was green.
Yeah. There was another episode.
The stop sign was green. The green meant stop, and red meant go.
But there was another episode, and there's like a pandemic killing everybody.
Yes.
And
I love that you and I know the same like 3 episodes. Like those are the ones we gravitate toward.
The professor's like, oh, he's like trying to find the cure.
Have you not thought about treating this with penicillin?
Well, no, he's like, I got a headache. You got any penicillin? And they're like, what?
Or aspirin.
Aspirin. Yeah, they're like, what are you talking about?
He's like, yes, like.
Have you not heard of penicillin? They're like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
And so he discovers penicillin and like saves everybody.
He discovers it, and then the people are trying to stop him from finding it, and all he did was like grow it on a piece of cheese or something like that and culture it, and they're all like, this is magic. And
yeah, dude, I mean, as corny as it was.
And then there was like an episode they went and there's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and they're trying to like, run away from it. I mean, yes, there was some corny stuff.
Of course. Well, so did Stargate. They had corny stuff, especially starting out.
I love that show though.
X-Files. Dude, there was so many.
I'm rewatching it now. Because it's been a long time since I saw it. I don't remember most.
Did you go to Hill College at all?
Yeah.
Did you have Dr. Howells?
No.
For anything? Man, he made it a purpose, like a point. We watched an X-Files, the modern day Prometheus was the name of the episode.
Okay.
And it was basically a retelling of the Frankenstein story modernized through X-Files. And like we did a whole study on it and everything. It's It's X-Files was cool. They had some really good
I
episodes.
love that show. You know, another one that I was thinking about the other day, we were talking about like favorite TV shows and stuff. I don't think most people know about it. I don't think that most people appreciate it or haven't seen it. Yes, it's a little cheesy at times. The Librarian.
You can talk. Wasn't that linked to Warehouse 13 or something in some way?
What? No, but it kind of, because it's very similar, right? Like it's. I mean, if you've seen Warehouse 13, the TV show, which I also liked. I think it was a little bit cornier, but it's good. When it was on, Stargate was on, so I really focused more on Stargate because like that was a show I was watching. I have watched all of Warehouse 13 since, and it's okay. But The Librarian is a great show. Has a bunch of people that you're going to be watching. You're like, oh my gosh, I know this guy. Oh, hey, I know this guy. I forget the main actor, but
wasn't the guy that played Doctor Who at one point? Wasn't he on there?
I never watched Doctor Who.
I don't watch the new stuff for reasons I won't go into, but like my wife, I never watched the original Doctor Who, but my wife got into it. Like I guess the reboot several years ago.
You mean like original, like the old black and white? Because it's been on for
I know it's been on for a long time. Like the 80s and 70s versions, I never watched that, but she watched. I guess they rebooted like 2000.
Okay,
and it has some really good actors. One of the guys. Did you watch Jessica Jones?
No.
I
don't think so.
You have no clue what I'm talking about.
Was it on during Stargate?
I don't know. It was on Netflix. Jessica Jones was on Netflix. It was like a Marvel thing when Netflix was still doing Marvel stuff, the good stuff like Jessica Jones and Daredevil and there was another one, but it's good. But anyway, I think he might have been on there. Is what my point. I think he was a librarian, maybe, but I'm probably totally wrong. He was European.
There was just a really
British guy.
There was just a really cool show that I had forgotten how much I enjoyed it. And now, like I say now, going back to watch it, I probably watched it a couple of years ago. But my wife actually enjoyed it because she was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. I mean, it's a neat enough show." And every episode kind of has something along those lines. That generation of sci-fi I really liked. Something else that I went back and rewatched recently is I say rewatched. This is going to kind of I love it when I do this, but I also hate it at the same time. I watched Battlestar Galactica 04, right, the remake. That they did, and I watched it when it was on because like my Friday night growing up as a teenager was at 6:00 and 7:00 was two old episodes of Stargate on Sci-Fi, 6:00 and 7:00. Then at 8:00 the new episode came out, right? So it would be like rerun, new episode, right? And then after the new episode would be whatever the second show was. So like I say, towards the end, they had like Stargate Atlantis or Stargate whatever. So it would be new episode of SG-1. Then the next thing on TV at 9:00 was the new episode of Atlantis.
Jason Momoa show.
Yeah, where he got to start, yeah. And then at 10:00 was Battlestar Galactica. And I remember because like that was my night, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I watched TV every Friday night. In hindsight, kept me out of a lot of trouble. I didn't go do anything fun on a Friday night. I sat in and I watched sci-fi. So if you're one of those kids in the generation, it's probably why you still to this day on a Friday night would rather sit in and watch TV than go out to a bar or do anything else. That's just me. I'd rather play video games or watch sci-fi. The 04 Battlestar was really good. I remember watching it. It was on. That was also about the time I got married, started having kids, like later on in life, but because those shows were on for a long time. Stargate was on for like 10 years. I think when I came into the series, it had already been on TV. So I forget when they would do it, but like they would announce like starting at this time, we're going to start season 1, episode 1, and those would be the reruns. So every Friday night you could watch it. You could watch the whole show. And then by the time that it came around, you were caught up to watch the new season kind of a thing. But when Battlestar came out, SG-1 was kind of funny. Atlantis was kind of funny, more satire, there's some serious episodes, but it was more entertainment. Battlestar was dark. I mean, it's, if you've seen the show, like it begins where the miniseries ended, but it begins, humanity's ended. There's 54,000, well, I say humanity in that side of the galaxy, their civilization has ended. There's 54,000 human beings left in the entire galaxy, in their galaxy. And they're traveling to find this, and they make it up turns out in this TV series to be true. They make it up. They're like, hey, there's a secret 13th tribe of Kobol. There's the 12 tribes of Kobol that have all been wiped out by the Cylons.
Sounds odd.
Yeah.
Odd analogy.
Yeah. And this 13th tribe that left long ago to find this mythical place where they settled, and we lost track of them. It's not a secret. We do know where it is. It was a closely held secret. Only myself and the president know. So we are now going to take you to the distant planet where the 13th tribe is. We're going to go look for Earth. And like, that's the point of the show. And it's dope. If you've never seen the series, fantastic. I mean, it's really cool. And of course, they make it up. Like that was like it's like in their holy book that they left and went to this planet of Earth, of a land of milk and honey, and blah 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 blah. Right. And of course, they're then in closed doors. They're like, we lied to give them hope. There's 54,000 people. We don't have a planet. We're being hunted. And then like from season to season, then at some point they find like a thing, and they're like, oh my god, this might actually exist. They find like the first marker. And blah, blah, blah. And they're being hunted. And then the show gets kind of weird because there's a lot of religion elements that get brought in. It's entertaining. Here's what I'm getting at. I thought I remember the show ending. Like, I remember watching it end. So when I was going back to rewatch it, I get to that episode and I'm thinking, because I have a great memory for something. Like, I can remember that Sliders episode just like that when we said it. Like, it's up there. I couldn't quote stuff, but I remember it. And I'm watching and I'm thinking in my head, like, oh, yeah, I remember this is about where it ends and blah, blah, blah. Like, so-and-so dies and so-and-so does this and blah, 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 blah. And then it ends and I'm doing something else. And I realize that in the corner, it says, like, up next. Like, it's, like, queuing up, like, the little timer before it starts. And it was season 5. And I went, there wasn't a season 5. Like, I had no idea. There was an entire another season of the show I never watched. I didn't even know it existed. Mm-hmm. I thought it was kind of a cliffhanger ending, but I guess life got busy and I lost track of sci-fi. So when I rewatched it, I got like an entire... It'd be like going back and watching How I Met Your Mother and finding out, no, there was actually a whole nother season. And I watch a lot of stuff. I don't want people to think that I'm only a sci-fi nut. Like one of my other favorite shows that I just finished, I started and finished, was Downton Abbey. Amazing.
Oh, really? I always want to watch that.
Amazing. Go watch it.
How I Met Your Mother is like... I've only watched it once, but it's one of my favorite shows.
I have the entire thing on like box set.
It's one of my favorite shows.
When we would go camping with the kids, we had our little pop-up camper, and we had the little like portable TV, that like little one that's up there. Mm-hmm. We had one just like it that had a DVD player in it. And it was perfect to go camping with because it was like, oh, you know, we don't really want to watch TV. But if you go camping and it starts raining or there's like just nasty weather, you want to have something fun besides just playing cards for like 10 hours.
Yeah.
So we would bring that. Well, once the kids would get done watching cartoons for the day, we would throw on an episode of How I Met Your Mother because it was just like on in the background. So that's how I started watching it all. It was like the fun time of like going camping and everything.
Yeah. That's a great show.
Man, well, what do you think? You think we like have covered enough?
I think we covered a lot. We went down some interesting rabbit holes.
Uncle Sam, did you have a fun time? Guys, if you have made it this far, you have come way far down the rabbit hole with us. And if you go back and watch some of the other videos, like, guys, everything's different. None of this is scripted. It's the two guys hanging out. Like, we're chilling here with Uncle Sam. But we're having a good time. We're hanging out in the garage. We're having genuine conversations about stuff that we don't talk about in advance. We'll sit here and be like, hey, how was your week? And then like, oh, I was busy. I didn't get to watch anything. We didn't talk about The Acolyte this week because I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch anything about it this week. I didn't see anything. So go back in one of our other episodes and we talked about it because it was on and it was fresh.
I'm done with it. I don't even care anymore.
Actually, the newest one is fantastic, but we'll save that for the next episode. And you really should watch it because it's a bunch of legend stuff that they brought back. It's super dope. In the meantime, you need to go on and do what, Justin?
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, please.
Well, depending on, so if you're on YouTube, definitely like, subscribe. Do me a favor, click share and send it to one friend.
Just one.
At least one friend that you think will enjoy this. And if you enjoyed it, you probably know people that will too.
And tell them to share it.
If you're on Spotify, follow us, do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And we will see y'all next week, man.
Guys, it's been a pleasure. Have a great time. Deuces.